Good evening and welcome to our city council meeting of April 28th. I'd like to welcome everybody and please turn off your cell phones. On roll call, Councilman um, Hemphill is excused. If you'd please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, that'll be done by Councilman Lopez, and then the invocation by Councilman Dusty.
I pledge allegiance to the
Flag
flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening. As we gather here today in service to our community, let us take a moment to reflect on the values that unite us: respect, wisdom, and a shared commitment to the well-being of our city. May we approach our discussions with open minds, seek understanding in our differences, and work together with integrity and purpose. May our decisions be guided by fairness and compassion, and may we always strive to serve with humility and dedication. With gratitude for this opportunity to lead and support one another, we begin today's meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any citizen comments on agenda items? No? Citizen comments on non-agenda items? Okay. Then at this time, the council is going to go into executive session to discuss item number 2 on regarding discussion legal matters and on contracts. We'll need a vote on it.
Make a motion that we move to executive session.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to go into executive session. All in favor? Opposed? Okay.
where they changed the
Mm.
fees, dropped the lower ones to make you happier. I don't know.
Okay, we'll go ahead and close the executive session and reconvene into our regular work session. Item number 8, budget work session. Matthew?
Evening, Council. I'm not Matthew Hochul. This is Troy Bingham. I'm your Finance Director. Matt is actually out sick today, so he has passed this duty off to me tonight. So I've modified a little of his slides, and we're going to see if we can make this happen tonight. So we're here as our last presentation. Our last meeting, we talked about general fund departments, and we talked about enterprise fund departments. So we weren't able to get to internal service funds. So that's one of our goals tonight. And then talk about issues in the budget that we want to start to piece apart and work together with and figure out where we're heading for our tentative budget in the timeline and then eventually our final budget. So tonight, again, is an overview of the departmental budget process. This is our second meeting. As part of that, we'll go over what our strategic goals when we're talking about the budget. What are we trying to accomplish each year? There's 10 pillars of goals that we have set as a council and as a community that we want to make sure our budget focuses on. Budgetary reminders, things that we want to bring back up during the budget process that you're aware of, that what's included currently in our balanced budget and what's not included in the balanced budget. So we'll point that out as we go through. The fire district is here tonight. Last meeting, when we presented the fire budget, they weren't able to attend. So we have 2 members of the fire district here tonight that would like to speak to you on their portion of the fire budget, because they do pay dollar for dollar what we pay. They pay $1. So they have some views that they like to get up here and talk about. So we'll get time for them. And then we'll go through those internal service funds. These are funds that charge various departments and or funds inside of the city of Safford. They don't charge any external customers. They only have internal customers. And then we'll talk about the budgetary outlook and then what the next steps are as a council. What do you want to see in the final budget? What don't you want to see in the final budget? And hopefully we come up with a game plan by the end of this presentation that gets us to May 12th, where we'll finally talk about what the budget's going to look like for the tentative and possibly the final budget heading into June. So here's the timeline. We started back in November. This process started. Departments put together their budgets. They submitted them in January. We went through those as internally as a staff, and the departments met and discussed those budgets in February. As of March, we had one-on-one meetings with each one of you council members and discussed the budget and issues that you guys saw during those meetings. We discussed, and with that, we moved forward with the budget that we have today, which is a balanced budget. And we started presenting departmental budgets, as I said, for general fund and enterprise funds in April. And this is the second meeting where we'll finally finish up that process so the public can see what we're proposing for fiscal year 2026. What's still I've highlighted in red here is the adoption of the CIP. We don't necessarily have to do it in May, but it would be optimal to do it in May. The tentative budget, we don't necessarily have to do in May. We could push it to June. That's just pushing it a little late. So we'd like to see the tentative budget where you set the cap, how high the budget can go. That's the tentative budget. That's not the final budget. The final budget can be passed in June or even July if we wanted. So we still have time. There's no rush tonight. The one thing that we can't change is the Truth and Taxation meeting that's set for that Thursday, June 5th. That's pretty much set in stone. So we have to do that one on June 5th. But everything else is flexible. So don't feel like you're in a rush. We have time to talk or we have time not to talk. So with that in mind, like I said, the fire district is here tonight. Their budget is a little bit different than what you'd see in your presentation you saw from last week. They don't include our grant funds. Grant funds that we receive personally as a city are not included in their budget. Their budget is truly what we spend for operations and or capital out of our own funds. They match dollar for dollar. So their budget's a little bit less than what you'd see in the overall budget for fire, but these, I've picked that out. And what I've given you is a presentation that we actually presented to the fire district. It feels like almost a month ago at one of their meetings. I went to their meeting, showed them our operational budget, showed them our needs for vehicle purchases and what that would mean in this new budget. Remember, fire is one of our largest, actually the largest increase we have in this fiscal year 2026 budget. And a lot of that is vehicle replacement. We got a little bit behind on what it costs to buy a fire truck and what it costs to replace fire trucks. So we needed to make up for that. And that's one of the biggest increases. Another thing that's new for the fire budget is the capital. We never had a 5-year CIP out of our fire department. Not for a lack of need, just for a lack of planning. And so now with our new fire chief, Patrick Anderson is here tonight. He can talk about his capital plan moving forward. What we're focused on for this budget, though, is just what we're doing in fiscal year 2026. There's two things. You've already taken up an item where we've are doing an assessment of the current building. That was a $60,000 budget adjustment we did in fiscal year 2025. The fire district would end up spending $30,000 of that. They're going to, like I said, dollar for dollar. We spend 30, they spend 30. So that $30,000 of that assessment is paid for by the fire district. The other thing that's new this year is we're actually getting local match for the idea of a fire training facility, which we currently have located on the other side of the Gila River. There's a training facility there. There's a major upgrades that we would be doing through grant funding. So we're hoping for a large grant that will eventually come through. As part of that grant funding, we're developing a local match, meaning that not only would the city of Safford, but any other regional entity that uses the facility would participate in that local match. So if we gave $75,000, the fire district would give $75,000. But we also have other entities like the Town of Thatcher and the Town of Thatcher Fire District that are interested in participating in that local match. And Patrick can give you more information on that. He's been doing this even as an assistant fire chief. He was negotiating for this. So Patrick can give you the insights on that. So the $30,000 plus that $75,000 is $105,000 that the fire district has never had to plan for. But keep in mind, we're a little bit different than a fire district. We have lots of different revenue sources here at the city. We have sales tax, we have property taxes, we have fees that we can charge. The fire district is a one-trick pony. It has fire levy taxes. So that's why we gave this presentation to them to help them understand their fire levy and what they could do. They also have reserves. So I guess they have a two-trip pony that they can lean on. And so the fire district, with that in mind, I'll turn the time over to Kip and Bill Brando. If you'd like to come up here and address the council with any thoughts you have.
I'm the minor guy. Tom Smith is our chair, and Kent Larson, and Kip and I and Keith Alexander are on we're theoretically elected representatives of our constituents within our fire district. And we have a taxing authority to create the funding to provide fire service to people outside the city limits. Graham County is very unique. By experience, this is my 49th year in Graham County, and I have a long history of firefighting. I fought fire for the Bureau of Land Management for 32 years. I've been on the fire district for pretty near 20 years, and I just finished up the installing all the fuel breaks, which y'all participated in. We're continuing on, which is part of our efforts with the different departments. So I've got a lot of experience with fire in a lot of different venues. Graham County is very unique. Normally, the rural places have paid fire departments. Graham County is one of the very few that has these relationships. We have Safford Rural Fire District, Jackson Heights, and Thatcher, Pima, and Fort Thomas. And it's very unique in terms of Arizona. I don't think there's any other one like us, which is kind of normal for Graham County. We're rather unique. Anyway, I want to commend Patrick Anderson. He's come, he actually attends our meetings, and we've talked about this. This gentleman came, and he thinks I'm mad at him. I was going to visit him, but I dealt with in my prior life budget people, and me and them don't get along usually. I'm usually in trouble one way or another. And so at the end of the day, we did vote to support the purchase of the apparatus and also the funding for the fire training facility. We did not vote on the new a upgrade or a new department facility because it's pending a study, and then it's all up for debate. So if you remodel the existing one, it's going to weigh $1. If you get a new one, whole new deal. And we would really like to, help Patrick upgrade. Because it benefits our people that we are not an endless pot of money. We have a source of taxes, but we can only increase so much a year, very small amount. So we can't just go out and just make a bunch of money off these people. And we also are very sensitive to them because if we spend a bunch of money, they're going to want to know why. And that's why I asked this gentleman, when we pursue this, that Safford, with your skills and ability in public affairs, helps us be able to communicate to our constituents why we're spending a bunch of money, which we don't normally have. And that would be one ask. So that's kind of an update. And as the last thing, we're on the cusp of a very historic thing in Graham County. I don't know if y'all know, we have all these 4 fire departments. Safford is in the process of reviewing a state agreement with the Department of the Arizona State Forestry Department that would provide a cooperating agency relationship with City of Safford Fire Department. PEMA's already signed, and so has Fort Thomas. Thatcher's in the process also. Once that happens, that will never have been in existence in this county. I know because I was the field manager at the BLM, and sometimes I would send help, but if something happened, guess who's going to go down the road? Me, because I didn't have authority to do it because I didn't have an agreement. But with that agreement, it would then facilitate help when needed. And I think it would be a very positive thing for our growing community. And with the hopes of us never have to have a paid fire department, whether in the city or because they're extremely, extremely expensive. So I'd encourage y'all to pursue that. And if anything I can help, Lath Evans is the new person responsible with the state here. And he's been working with them, with all the departments, to facilitate this, and it'll be a good thing. And it might bring some additional revenue. Patrick.
You want to give an update on the fire training facility?
Thank you all for listening
Thank you.
to me. Appreciate it. This is a good man. I've known his dad for a while too, even though he didn't, I'm sorry.
And just a reminder, we're in a work session too, so it's an open discussion.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Like Troy said, we've been working on this training center. I've been working on it for years now. Been in talks with the PEMA Fire and their fire district on donating some money for it, and then Thatcher's Rural Fire District on it. I believe, I haven't seen anything signed or that, but Thatcher's working their way through their budget system to put money towards it. We put in for a grant last week for some state money through Siskamani for it also. That's where we're sitting at on that. Tomorrow, I believe, the people are coming down, start the assessment on the fire station, so hopefully we can start moving forward to figure out where we're going to go on there.
So this budget, and again, meeting with the district because it's a bit of a break from what we've done in the past in terms of expenditures, gets us through the vehicle purchases that we need. And of course, when we get the assessment on the building, that's probably going to be a conversation for the next budget cycle. So as we look at that assessment and we look at whether we remodel or we go with a new building, obviously we want the district on board in that conversation as well, which is why we invited them here this evening. So thank you for coming. We've tried to engage with them. We wanted to make sure that they came to you to reassure you that the point at which we have the budget now, they've been involved in that process.
As a work session, any questions for the fire district? I think they were interested in going home. Before we move on, because we're just moving on to a completely different subject. So want to make sure no questions for the fire district. Okay, thank you guys.
Thank you, gentlemen.
For coming tonight. Moving on. So as I talked about the 10 pillars of what our budget is supposed to have as qualities moving forward. So quality of life is always a focus for a city. It makes us different than a county and different than a state agency, right? And then infrastructure and development and maintenance is one of our things that we've been really talking about, is making sure that we have funds set aside today for capital and cyclical replacement throughout the life cycle of our assets, making sure that those things meet their useful lives and make sure that we're able to replace them when it has met its useful life. Financial management, I'm one of the second largest increases in this year's budget, you'll notice, is the finance department and financial management. Growth and development is always a focus for our economic development. Intergovernmental cooperation, again, we have IGAs with many of our neighboring localities. Legislative advocacy, we always do as part of the city manager's onslaught of needs. He's always looking for legislative advocacy and bills that can help us move our city along. Business relationship and development is always a core to what we're doing in the city. Use of technology is a way we can not necessarily use human resources, and public outreach and information is one of our key focuses for getting the information out to the public so they can make decisions, and then rounding it off with our human resource management. With that in mind, the budget that you have been in your packet and has been presented for the last month has had these items in it. There has been a 5.5% increase in healthcare costs that has been passed along. That's 5.5% for both the employer and the employee. ASRS and PSPS and EORP, all are pension plans that the city participates in, and all of them are seeing varying levels of increases, and one is a possible decrease in a Plan 3 PSPRS, which is rare. Movement of movement of costs from one department to another department. You'll see that even in my budget, I picked up somebody from engineering, HR gave up somebody to public works. So all of your budget shows a lot of that movement tonight. The internal service funds we talk about will have some of that movement in it. There's going to be as you see the budget, it's sometimes confusing that it has prior year budget, the budget that we're currently in, fiscal year 2025. It has their proposed budget, what the department proposed. It shows what the city manager approved as part of that, and then a final budget. So you have to make sure you're in the right column when we're talking about budgets and what's going on. Unique one will be IT tonight, and I'll point it out when we get there. Merit increases in COLA. Merit is based on what the supervisor and the employee sat down in January and talked about, and that's based on a 1% all the way up to a 2%, varying levels throughout, and we showed you the bell curve of how that gets dispersed throughout the city. The COLA is currently based on the Western CPI, which is 2.5%. So that's all baked into the budget as we speak tonight. Final cost and allocations of internal service funds. Again, internal service funds, if I change the budget in internal service funds, that changes the budget for everybody in the city because that's who pays for a lot of these internal service funds. So until we get a final internal service fund budget, those things will constantly cause other departments to go up or go down depending on what we do in internal service funds. It's just the game that we play in budget. So with that in mind, we have internal service funds tonight. This eye chart that I've put in this slideshow for you is very small, but really the focus of it is really just telling you that one of the biggest increases is in our IT department. The second biggest increase is you're going to see is in our fleet and utility support department. And AMI is a real change in what we're doing in operations. So we're not showing you every one of our internal service funds tonight. We're just showing you the major changes, which is 4 of the 7. So with that in mind, utility support. Utility support is a division that all of our utilities, that would be water, sewer, gas, and electric, all participate and fund based on the number of meters they have in their department. With that in mind, the one change that we're seeing in this department, as you can see, is the addition of a water analyst position. So we would be taking a water operator out of our water division and reclassifying that position to an analyst position that serves all 4 of the utilities. Again, there'll be a slide tonight that we talk about reclasses particularly, so I think we should wait for that discussion and talk about all reclasses together if you guys are for that. And so just keep in mind the biggest change you're seeing in utility support is that one position getting added that they've never had before.
I have a question, Troy.
Yeah.
Is there a reason why we're taking that position from water and not one of the other utilities?
Water currently has the vacancies that would allow for that. There's not typically a lot of any vacancies available to take from a position. I guess we could look at that option, but we just took water because that was the easiest and most vacant position. Any suggestion you would have there, I guess I'd be open to.
I feel like water is one of the departments that has difficulty finding people, and then we're going to take someone from them. And I just was curious if there was maybe an option for me.
I think the city manager, I mean, he has a really good explanation. We don't, like, water has been down 5 people for as long as he's been city manager here. And so giving him 5 people all at once is great, but I think ramping into 4 people, and then maybe this is a temporary switch, this position would eventually come back to water once we get it established. So it's not doing everything at once for water. It's getting them used to maybe 4 positions. Then that 5th position could return one day when they're finally fully staffed with at least 4 positions. Does that make sense? Did I paraphrase that enough, John?
And that's how we approached it, because really the number of employees in the other utilities, you really can't do it with. So you have an option of either adding a position and then, costing it out over the utilities. But the idea was, since we have vacancies and since we've had these vacancies for quite some time, we probably would get more out of that position, putting them in a position to actually get some work done, as opposed to just having a vacancy. And then if at some point down the road we did have to add positions back in water, we could do that in another budget. And the other part about that would be, as we look at whatever additional work that's being done, a lot of valve work and things of that nature that they're doing, as we ramp up and get some of that work done, again, you could always come back in the next budget cycle and add another position. Or you could just, if you wanted to fulfill the position now and just make it a new position, you could do that too. But the other utilities are just too small to offer that opportunity.
Are you taking a physical body from the water department as the position? Are you taking a person or just a position?
At this time, we would take the position. We do have someone who tends to be working on analytical type stuff already in water. I'm sure they would be an applicant, but I again, long-term, I think we would have to find somebody to fill that position, because I don't know if that individual eventually will still be there, but it is the position that's being offered.
Any more questions on utility support? Appreciate it, thank you. So moving on, so it's not just the Troy Bingham show. I've had the IT director present his budget and the changes, and I'll cover anything he doesn't cover.
Good evening. One of the things I wanted to point out, let's see here. Accidentally changed his slide. No, just accidentally hit it when I moved it. One of the things I want to point out this year was, this year we have increased our professional services budget to include hiring a consultant to conduct a technology audit. The goal is to evaluate the security of our data and systems, identify any vulnerabilities or risks, and recommend any improvements to our system. This will give us a comprehensive look at our system to develop a systematic plan to enhance our security posture. We will also be utilizing free tools and programs offered through Arizona Department of Homeland Security, a Center for Internet Security, cybersecurity, infrastructure security agencies also. We have increased our operating budget to include replacing patron PCs in the library and the addition of a residency card software and hardware system, which is called ID123. So, any questions?
What's the operating cost for the residency cards that we'll have to pay going forward? There's probably some initial costs up front, and then
Yes.
year to year, what's that cost going to
So
be?
it depends on how many cards or how many IDs that we purchase. Right now we had I think off the top of my head, we had initially planned on doing 2,000, but we're probably going to bump that down to probably 500 for right now. And I think that was around, yeah, it wasn't very much. It was like $6,000, $8,000, somewhere in there.
500 for 500 residency
was-
cards. Is that really worth it?
That was for 2,000.
Okay.
Yeah, because right now, we've had a series of situations where even going to the landfill, right now what we have is residents bringing a paper bill with them, trying to prove that they actually can access the landfill. It's 2025. I think at this point, we can use either a physical card or opt for a virtual card. And then that card would contain multiple pieces of information so if you had a membership, you went to the pool, or you had a membership at the library, or you used the landfill. So it would be a more modern way and more efficient way for us to track that data, and in the long run, it would provide us with feedback in terms of pressure on those services, which would help us then look at things like cost recovery and how we pay for it. So there's a lot of benefits to having that electronic versus, hey, I got to show up and I got to show you my bill. We did the household hazardous waste this past Saturday, and it was interesting because people would show up with a bill, but it was like their solar bill, and for some reason, solar wasn't on the other bill, and so there's all this creation of confusion. I think using these cards would solve a lot of that.
And so the cost includes the use of a physical card and the mobile.
A virtual ID, that's on your phone.
Right.
Yes. We're hoping most people go with the virtual card. That'd be awesome. But
And also, I don't want to punish our residents if they don't get their card and go to the pool. Is there going to be a way that we can, are we still going to allow them to take their utility bill or whatever? I'm just
If
curious.
somebody showed up with a utility bill, I don't think anybody would say no. I think the idea is, like with any service, there are requirements, right? Including, paying your utilities, whether you do it online or you do it in person. So really, this would just be another standard operating procedure, which we would hope that we could roll out some information on, get buy-in on, because there's a lot of benefits to us as a community to do so. So it would just be another way of doing business like any other. But again, if someone showed up and said, hey, I've got this bill and it shows, well, you would hope that you would allow that. And maybe it's an opportunity to show them, hey, here's where you could have it virtually on your phone. So again, I think part of the challenges would be, especially if you're more of a senior, right? Are you savvy with a phone? Or, hey, how do we get you a card? So those are things that we would have to work through, but I think they're things that we could overcome.
Thank you.
I still haven't seen a great deal of value in it yet. Using the bill would work. You could even put markers on your bill that they could still use their bill.
It is an option.
Okay, I'm going.
I had a question. You talked about updating the security. Is that the same security that was mentioned in the audit that we needed to take a look at?
No, that's more on my department and related to our financial software. He's talking the overall network security for the entire city. The audit focused more on the financial security of the financial software, what can actually cut a check.
Okay.
And that's a procedure that we'll be doing in my office, not in his. So I don't know if Sam, he has a reclass in his personnel budget. We'll be covering that as part of the reclasses, but just wanted to point that out. The one thing I wanted to clear up on this budget, you'll see that the budget supplements show 100,000. The city manager did cut that amount to 50,000. We're moving forward with the idea of a forensic network study. That doesn't mean that we're not necessarily not going with Darktrace immediately. We just want to get that forensic network study that will tell us from a third party what we need to do to secure our network and give us advice and recommendations. And Darktrace could be one of those recommendations. We just want to get an expert in here, a third party, to give us that evaluation for under $50,000. And the budget includes that. So we did not include money to start Darktrace in 2026 necessarily. What we're starting is that forensic study that could lead to an item in 2027 for additional hardware needs, that whatever comes out of that study. So we have engaged a vendor. We're just trying to work out the T's and C's, the terms and conditions of their contract, and we'll work through that. So any questions on IT before I move on? All right. With that in mind, we have the fleet. I have no one representing fleet here tonight, so I guess I'll cover this one. The biggest change you're going to notice here is we have put together a larger than last year capital budget. We have money, about $800 million, or $8 million, $800 million, $8 million in our fleet replacement funds for various departments that have put money aside for years and years and years. There is a need to replace both small equipment that we would buy from Kempton, and there would be large equipment that we have yet to get to. So I'm putting together a list, and I can provide that to council as of tomorrow of what makes up the large equipment. And we're still finalizing the order with Kempton for 2026. We have an item tonight to talk about our intent to reimburse that kind of relates to that item, so I can cover that further at that point. But this is a larger than normal capital budget. We don't hope it to be like this every year, but there is some cyclical replacement we need to get to on a lot of our equipment. We're doing major replacements of transmissions, motors, when we really should just be buying new equipment and letting the equipment move on. So we're trying to get ahead of that. And there'll be a presentation about fleet at a future council meeting, I believe, May 12th, or possibly, we're still trying to get in front of council to present what we believe the useful life of our vehicles are and how far behind we are in that.
Can you tell us who decides that? Like, I know, like, who comes out and says, okay, IT needs this many vehicles, HR needs this many? Who is picking that, and what are you basing that on?
So we have a
Because-
fleet manager and we have a fleet policy that is being developed with our fleet manager and our assistant city manager, Eric Verano. So they will be presenting you with both a policy and that stipulations of what they dictate a useful life, and how people procure vehicles and how people get vehicles will all be included in that. So did I cover that well enough, Eric?
There's not somebody now, there hasn't been somebody now?
There's always been a plan with the fleet manager that has been formally put together in a policy, I guess. We've never had a formal, this is what we do, this is how we financially plan for it. All of that has just been kind of ad hoc and never really formatted in a written plan. So we've developed a written plan. We've actually taken it from other localities. We've modified it to meet the Safford needs, and we're going to present that to you at a future meeting. Sound like a good idea?
Sounds like it should have already existed.
Don't worry, we're on it.
Yeah,
It does exist to a degree. I mean, in large part, if you look at the vehicle and equipment rotation plan, there's a fund, and each fund has vehicles listed in it. Those vehicles are based on needs that are being fulfilled right now. I think the real issues that we run into operationally, there's a couple things. One is conversations occurring between the fleet manager, whoever that was, past or current, and our finance department. So this becomes glaringly obvious when we're working on our rate study, where the rate consultant comes in and they say that compactor is a 5-year item. We've got 7, finance has 9. So the idea is, by using a fleet and equipment rotation plan that has an industry standard built into it, we're talking a language everybody understands, right? If I use, and I don't know the name specifically, but let's say ABC standard, if I go to a rate consultant, I say, hey, we use the ABC standard. So one thing that we have noticed that has been occurring in the past is that there is a overwhelming sense of frugality that has permeated the organization for a number of years. And so while there are times when that is beneficial, where it breaks down is where finance has a vehicle budgeted for a 7-year replacement, and the fleet manager decides to keep it for 10. Well, why is that a problem? You would think, hey, we got 3 more years out of that vehicle, which is a good thing, unless you don't continue to add a value to that vehicle, because now you're replacing it at 10 years instead of 7. So you got 7 years worth of money, you replace a vehicle, now you're replacing after 10 years, which is more expensive. So the short answer, which is, I
It
guess
wasn't
it's too
very
late for
short.
that. The short answer is that we do have a plan. It's just that there are things that we could be doing better, and part of that is how we communicate both operationally and financially. And the way to do that is to standardize a policy that both shops understand and are working off the same set of rules.
Well said, that's exactly. We've met with all the departments, finance and the departments and fleet were always on a different book. So now we're trying to get on the same page with one another, so.
is the study we're gonna have also gonna tell us how many vehicles we actually need?
What study are we talking about?
Well, okay,
No,
does,
the policy won't do that. The policy is a guideline for how we rotate them through. However, I think the intent is to have the fleet manager come in and discuss with you some of the vehicles that we have and what the current status of our fleet is based on the age of the fleet and how old it actually is versus where it should be. So I believe, Mr. Bejarano, I believe that the fleet manager will be having a conversation on that, right?
Yeah. Yes. And the frugality that John speaks to, I mean, we're still looking for ways that we can cut back on the number of vehicles. How many dump trucks does the city need to own? Does every department need to have a dump truck? So we're still asking those questions that benefit the citizens of Safford and trying to keep that fleet as small as possible. But it is your largest infrastructure outside. I mean, it's larger than your water utility infrastructure, the amount of money we spend on vehicles here in the city. So it's one of those big things that needs a big plan, right?
I think my question kind of piggybacks off Arnold's. What he was kind of getting at is when I asked who decides, like, when I drive by somewhere and then I get a phone call from a client and they send me an email of a picture of 5 different vehicles at the pool. Why do you guys need 5 vehicles there? 5 different ones, and you see no employees. So I think that's what I was more of asking of, does every single person in the water, electric, or whatever department, does every single person need a vehicle? Or are we looking at ways to maybe buddy them up? Because it's been brought up before, well, then they have to share tools. Well, if you know you're gonna share a truck, then you know where to put your tools. So is that being looked at versus every single person going out into the field having their own truck and then all meeting up at one place and citizens complaining about it?
I could say that I've addressed that, not in the fleet replacement program. We have a CityWorks software that we can start tracking in utilities, how many vehicles show up to the scene, how many parts are used at the scene. And so we've scrutinized how many vehicles show up at a scene and why that's needed. And there's justification for that. Some of our departments do gather up in teams already. Some of our departments do not. So we haven't talked about a cultural shift in those departments. That's not part of the fleet department, but that is a discussion that we could talk, that would help the citizens of Safford. If we could get to those places where we could share vehicles and things like that. But ultimately, there's lots of things that need to get done in the city at the same time. They can't all be in the same vehicle sometimes. So there is a reason for that. I know 5 vehicles, any city you drive by, it's a typical story, how many people are standing around the shovel. And we're trying to look at that. Again, with CityWorks software, we can actually track that. Everything that it takes to do any sort of job here at the city is being tracked in that CityWorks software. So that's stuff that we can start analyzing if we have an analyst that can actually give us that data. So we can, not only the anecdotal information you're getting from citizens, we can actually add, here's how many cars show up at every scene typically if we have that kind of data. And right now we only have that for our water and wastewater department. So gas and electric are slowly coming on board and we can start gathering more and more information. So we're getting there. It's that we see the dream, and I'm glad you said it because our water director is out there and he gets teased often about how many vehicles are at the scene.
It
So-
sounds nitpicky, it really does, but when we get the texts and the emails and the citizen complaints, then, we have to pass it on to you.
It's not. And again, it could be the evolution of how we manage those vehicles. So again, we're starting at a kind of a rudimentary level. We're at least tracking cost and looking at it. This year, for the first time, I had the fleet manager attend all the budget meetings in which vehicles were being requested. So the idea is that that individual who is the most knowledgeable about those vehicles and their current status is in the room to say, hey, do we need to replace that? Your question, however, is a different one. It gets to operational, right? So that becomes a management issue. Now, if we have 5 vehicles show up at a scene, each one of those individuals, after they show up at that scene, may go in a different direction, right? So that could be part of that issue. But it's a great question because it's kind of what we call like a meta question about how do we organize the fleet at a higher level and are we using it at a most efficient way? And I think that is yet to be determined. I think we're progressing in that direction. I don't think we're there yet, but it's a great question.
Thank you.
Any other questions about fleet? Again, I will provide a list, hopefully to council as soon as possible, showing that the big equipment purchases. I don't know if we finalized the Kempton's list that I can show you. It's approximately between $1.5 million and $2 million, but we're still working on that list. So really, I'll focus on giving you the big stuff. That's the big portion of this $5 million. And at that point, you guys can give us your assessment of what you guys think. Moving on to AMI, the biggest change you can see here is in the capital budget. They've never had a capital budget. Back in 2013, they replaced every meter in the city, both water, electric, and some gas. I'm not quite sure. But all that meter replacement happened all at the same time. So now we're having failures after the warranty period of 10 years and the limited prorated warranty that goes to 15 years. So we're already seeing failures in our water and electric meters. Not as much in electric. Water is really the biggest failure point right now. But we have come up with a plan to divide the city up into 10 zones. We plan on addressing one zone in fiscal year 2026, and that would be 8,000 customers divided up into 10 zones, would be about 886 meters of water that we would replace in fiscal year 2026, and it would be about 400 customers of electric. Commercial, again, that makes that a little bit bigger, but with that in mind, this is just the hardware purchase. So buying the actual meter that connects to our census system is going to cost about $1 million for both water and electric. Gas, as you can see through the CIP, they were able to go get a grant that pays for a large portion of their gas meters to be replaced. Again, all at once, not optimal. It's requiring us 10 years from now or 15 years or 20 years to come back and do the same thing again. What I'd like to get into at the city is a more cyclical process. Like I said, dividing the city up into 10 zones, systematically working your way through the city, and then just starting over in year 10 back at zone number 1 and just going through it. So this will be an ongoing customer service AMI responsibility moving forward, that meters stay current, stay active, and that we're billing our customers, because our major source of revenues for utilities is the fee, and those fees are based on these meters. So when the meter doesn't work, we have to give you a standard bill that you would expect for that month, or we just have to give a guesstimate. So we would like to not do that. We'd like to give you an accurate reading of what you actually used of that utility and give you a bill accordingly. So in order to do that, we need to keep these meters up to date and current. So it's an expensive ordeal, but it's something that we just stopped in 2013 that we're going to try to start back up and come up with a process for doing this. So we've taken steps, as you've already approved some of the purchases. There'll be another purchase tonight for electric meters. The lead times on these meters is long. So we might not be able to start on July 1 like we hope, but we'll start this project as soon as possible. With that in mind, I stand for any questions on AMI. Does everyone understand what I'm trying to do there in our automated meter reading department, right?
Are we purchasing all of the electrical meters all at one time? So then the clock starts ticking now and then
Just
we may
that
not
one
get to
zone.
it? Okay,
Just that one zone.
Okay.
Yeah, we don't want to get that clock started before we have to.
exactly.
So,
Okay.
yeah. But yeah, there is a lot of meters, and the cost, especially for a commercial meter, they can be astronomical. So unbelievable how much we pay to just meter how much Walmart uses in electricity. So, but those are a cost that city bear, and that we charge that accordingly through our utility rates, right?
And it was asked in a previous meeting of, did we know why these meters were failing? And we were told you'd get back to us, but I haven't seen anything.
So they have a useful life of 10 years, and then they have a prorated warranty when it comes to water for an additional 5. The electric meters only have a 5-year warranty, and they have a prorated useful life that can go as long as 20 years. So the meter has a battery in it. That battery is what gives the reading. When that battery dies, and it can die because it was sitting on the shelf for a long period of time before it was installed, it could die because of the environment that it's in. It's buried in the ground, it gets covered in soil, it gets covered in water. All of these things can go to failures. If it happens within the warranty period, we can send it back to the manufacturer and get our money back and get a new meter. If it happens after the warranty period, you get nothing. And all you have is an unworking meter and an inability to charge the customer. So what we need to do is get ahead of that from happening and get the meter replaced before that failure happens. But it can happen at random times. We can't guess which meter is going to go next. It's just random throughout the city. So right now we're already facing that because we're in our 13th year of some of these meters, that random failures throughout the city. We read about 100 or 500 meters every month annually, and that's getting bigger and bigger and bigger every month. So as I started a year and a half ago, this barely came to my understanding about 6 months ago. So I'm trying to resolve this as quickly as possible so we can get back on a meter reading process. So
So they are failing because of the battery.
it is really the battery. We don't get really the gears, or we get customers complaining that they think it's inaccurate and we can get it bench tested. But for the most part, it's that battery that fails, that gives that actual reading on the meter. That's what's failing. So, and a battery has a useful life, right? It's not going to last forever.
This is a longer discussion than I want to have with you right now, but I did ask you how and why it was failing, and that you was going to get back to me, and you haven't. I did want to know exactly what is failing, because you keep using the word "they are failing." So it'd be kind of nice to know what's failing. So that
You can get with our AMI techs and kind of, if we have some sort of stat, we'll get you that available. But anecdotally, it's the battery fails and the reading is no longer available and it's no longer broadcasting. So we don't know.
Meters can tell on themselves, just like your phones nowadays. They've made a lot of progress over the years in these meters. They're electronic. There is no gears and stuff like that. So
Yeah, and we're always trying to stay with the latest and greatest technology. We can shut off remotely. We don't need to go out to the house anymore for certain types of our meters. So all of these things cut on operational costs. So cost savings can be had because of electronic and technology. So we'll get you a list from our AMI on what's causing these meter failures. I don't know if we have a electronic list, but I'll see what I have and I'll get you something. Sorry about that. All right, so we've reached the portion of the meeting to talk about reclasses. We mentioned these in various budgets. We do have the department managers here. If you'd like, I can call them up one by one and they can explain the position. And at that point, we can get through all of them and then we can start addressing them all. Does that sound like a game plan? With that in mind, I'll let Victoria start as our library director.
All right, good evening, Mayor and Council. So we did request one reclass this year for a library technician, which we have 3 currently. We requested one of those positions be reclassed to a team program coordinator. And we really, when when I request a reclass, I really look at what we're not doing well as a library. And what we traditionally have not done well is our teen services. We've really, I think, with my first 5 years here, we really did not have a person focused on teen programs, and it showed. Our attendance was low. Teens would come in and not have an interest in the library or be respectful towards staff. And in the last couple of years, we've really focused more on teen advisory groups, getting their actual input. What do they want to see in the library? Teen volunteers come in and shelve with us, shelve the collection, give us recommendations about what you want to see. We've sent staff to trainings to interact with teens because, like we know, 0 to 5, it's a very developmentally different age group. Teens are developmentally different. So we really have noticed an increase in teen engagement, attendance. We have 4 programs a month for teens now, where when I first started, we had 1 a month. We have teens coming in every day, coming to utilize the library, really giving us feedback as to what they want to see going forward. And I think it's really made a difference having a person that's really just focused on that. And this is a position we did have in the past. And during, I believe, the recession, it was one of the positions that was cut. So I'd like to have that position again because I really feel that it's been a big benefit. And our teens come in and they're excited to see us. And those of you that have been here a while, we've really developed a positive relationship with them. And I would hope that would continue with a reclass and giving that person more responsibility and more interaction. And I think a higher level of service, which is always what we're striving for. Thank you.
You'll notice that we have a dollar amount next to each one of these. That's what we see as the annual impact. That's the smallest impact with library from the general fund. That's the color coding that Matt came up with here. Green's general fund, yellow is enterprise fund, and blue is internal service fund. All right, Tyler.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thanks for the opportunity to be here. We are asking this budget year to take a patrol position and convert it to a patrol sergeant spot. We've seen the need arise for quite some time. Basically, we have 4 shifts that our officers work. We work 24/7, and currently we have 3 patrol sergeants, which leaves our weekday shift with lack of direct supervision. With that, as some of you may know, we've got some military folks, some first responders, and people that have been around a little bit. We're a paramilitary organization, so we like to have that first line direct supervision. It increases our ability to provide for our patrol officers and for the public. We have a supervisor that's directly on scene working with the officers, and when we have these low frequency, high risk incidents, it's pretty critical that we have somebody there to have that direct supervision, to have that decision making ability. We have great patrol officers that all do a great job, and this kind of relieves some of the burden from them and puts it on that supervisor that has a little bit of additional training, has a little bit of responsibility. And I will tell you, as a patrol sergeant is where the rubber meets the road for the police department. We can't accomplish near the things that we do in our community in regards to public safety without these folks that are serving currently in these positions. They take on not only the role of being a working patrol officer, they still respond to calls, they do all of these things, and they have supervision, and each of them individually has some administrative roles. This is the backbone. This is where the communication from the chief down gets relayed to the patrol officers. In line with recruiting young officers, over the last few years, we have seen our tenure go from most of our officers being 15 plus years on the job to the majority now is under 5 years. We've got some great people. Even though they're young, we have some great people. They do require somewhat more supervision and guidance and direction, and our hope is to continue to develop them and build them up to continue to do good things here in our city. So that is definitely our ask. I stand for any questions that you have.
All right, gas compliance coordinator to a lead gas technician. We're going to have Raymond present from his department.
Council. We currently did not fill the lead position when the gentleman that was in that position retired, and we changed that position to a compliance coordinator. We did not promote our current compliance coordinator to the lead position at the time because we felt that he was not ready for the responsibilities of the position. But over the last 2 years, he's shown that he's more than capable of being a lead and has grown into his current positions. My employees look up to him, and he has helped them grow in their own positions. He currently has taken on more responsibilities in his position, including reviewing documentation, inputting work orders, reads, and rough drafting some of our reports. While I've been busy with audits and writing our grants and updating our operations manuals. We are also currently automating some of our systems, our operational systems, and we'll be inspecting those sites by computer instead of going to physically seeing those sites weekly or sometimes even monthly. And some of them we would actually visit daily if we had issues. This gives our crew more time to do projects and work on those kind of things. I'd also like to have him trained more in my succession training. So if when I leave, I have somebody to replace me. We're also hiring new employees as part of our grant project. We're going to hire 2 more employees. And then we're also in the process of writing 2 more grants after that. And with the federal funding, we'll also see an increase in federal audits. And we also have a local auditor that just moved in. And we usually have a construction inspection maybe once or twice a year. Now we're seeing them once or twice a month. So that's increased. And when they come to inspect us, I have to drop everything and be out there because we need a supervisor on site. So promoting him would allow me to continue doing my job and not have to drop everything at a moment's notice. He will also play a pivotal role in including managing my employees and assisting with our day-to-day operations. Stand for any questions if you have any.
This still a working position too?
Yes, sir. It will be a working position.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
This first one in blue, the Water Resource Operator 1 to a Utility Data Analyst, this is still fluid. That's a water joke? Okay, it didn't work out. So as you heard from our last meeting, we've filled all of our Water Operator 1s, so most likely we'll be moving over a lead position to pay for this or to transition. That means that the $38,556 there is actually a very overstated number. It might be a lot less if you move a lead position. Again, we haven't done the calculation for that, but again, when we started the budget, we had Water Operator 1s open, so that's what we used to come up with this difference. Again, that could be a little bit less. To explain this position, I think John's talked about a little bit. This would be responsible for giving us back data that would help us make decisions better in our utilities, both water, gas, electric, wastewater. All those utilities would be using our CityWorks software that they could report on how much they're doing as far as accomplishing tasks, doing work orders. There's a lot of data consistency that needs to be looked into there, and this position, I think, would take that as a lion's share. The other thing is we have a SCADA system, a supervisory control and data acquisition system, which allows us to monitor our water wells from remotely, gathering how much well water is available, how much water we pumped, getting all that information put together in some sort of report fashion so we can know how well we're producing water, how well the drought is progressing or decreasing, all that information that we could analytically look at rather than anecdotally. So again, this position is a first-time analyst in the utility department that would help us gather more and more data so we can present it to council and give you guys informed decision-making. Any questions about that?
At what point would you tell us the amount? Because you're wanting us to vote to pass, but you're saying the amount might change at what point are you going to know?
So
Will
this,
we
I
know?
guess, this would be the maximum. Right now, we would set this as our budget. We could set it less, like I guess you could say. Once we know more, again, we could always have a water operator position become available before July 1st. So it could be possible, but right now it's, I guess, the highest amount that it could be is $38,556. Every budget is kind of just a guesstimate. And then when you actually start July 1st, you start having actuals. We might not spend the full $38,000. So I just wanted to point that out on this position that this number might seem a little high, but it might not be that high in the end, I guess. So right now in the budget, we would stick with the 38,556 just to be conservative, to make sure that we have budget authority if we did hire somebody. But we could reduce that number if we had to. I mean, a few $1,000s if necessary, depending on what's going on in June in the month in the water department.
Would this position relieve some of the duties that some of the other employees are doing currently in the utility departments? For instance, I know that Morgan, Mr. Seal, does a lot of, I think, some analytical data and working on the SCADA and things like that. So I'm just wondering if this position will relieve some of that.
Good evening, Mayor and Council and Councilman Flores. This position would primarily take advantage of more of administrative tasks. So right now they would be focusing on the city works where we kind of alluded to a water position that's already taking care of these tasks like city works, closing work orders out, doing the quality control, making sure that employees are putting in their time, their equipment, and their material that they used. That does take time, and with me trying to focus on other things, I don't have a lot of that time, so he's already kind of taking care of that task for me. I'm currently cross-training him to do ADOT permitting as well. So ADOT permitting is for water, gas, and electric. And so this individual could also support the utilities in that way, where I'm taking time to get all these permits together with ADOT, and some of them take several months, and interactions back and forth with ADOT, where I'm cross-training this individual to take that task as well. So it'd be more administrative role that they would be able to lighten the load in that regard.
This is some of the data that you showed us when we went on that tour with you here recently, gathering up the mapping and the data and how the site was when you got there, how it was during and after you left, and combining it all.
So yeah, there's a lot of possibilities that this position could look into, and look into efficiencies, things like that. There's a Dream Report software that we use for the wastewater treatment plant that utilizes that SCADA, and it tells us how many gallons comes through the plant and how many gallons leave. Well, I'd like this individual to be able to utilize that software on the water side. So how many gallons did we pump from this location in 24 hours, and you can even compile into a monthly report. So this individual is very sharp with the software side of things, and we can utilize it.
What position would we be taking that person from that they're currently in?
So if this position would be out for hire, but the current employee that's doing these tasks is an operator 2. He's been there only 1 year, and we've promoted him into the 2 because the tasks that he does is over the 1 position.
So that would then open up your 2 again?
Yeah, and we currently have two positions vacant. That would create a 3rd position. Other than that, all of the water resource operator 1 positions, there's essentially a 1 year is the longest tenure that we have right now in the
How many
entry level.
2s do you have filled right now
We have 3 2s right now,
that are filled?
our field,
Okay.
correct. And then we have 1 lead, and the lead position is 7-year tenure. And then the longest operator 2 position is a 6-year tenure. Other than that, it's a 2-year, and I apologize that we have 4 2s that are filled. So,
On your gathering apparatuses, your SCADA, all your remote sites, when things go down, who works on them?
a great question. It's that same individual. If we didn't have the individual, it would be either myself or Jonathan Driver, who is the water quality supervisor. He's familiar with some of the instrumentation as well. But right now we lean on him. He's been very sharp, and we've been able to kind of cut him loose and him just take the reins. For example, we have a control valve at Robinson Ranch that can control the flow, the amount of flow that we send to the golf course. We asked him to provide logic within our PLC to enable us to hit a flow rate on the computer, and that control valve will oscillate to that flow, and he did that from scratch. He's a very talented individual in that regard.
Thank you, sir.
And kind of anecdotally, I guess, to add to this, I mean, one of the questions I was trying to apply for a grant for our AMI project, the $1 million we spend there. There's a water grant through WIFA, water infrastructure, water, whatever it is for Arizona WIFA, whatever they're called. So one of the things that we don't have a calculation for is water loss in the system. We have production wells, we have production inlet from Bonita. We know how much water we're adding to the system, and we know how much water we're metering out of the system. So that calculation needs to be done on a weekly basis and then averaged over the 52-week period to come up with your average water loss. That would have really helped us on that grant. We weren't successful in moving forward in getting money from WIFA because we didn't actually have that calculation. So this position, there's some key facts that we need to know about our water system to even apply for grants that this position could help us with. So I do see a lot of benefit for this, and this would help also in my asset findings that you noticed in our financial reports. That CityWorks system comes together with our Cassell system and our GIS system to help us better track our infrastructure. So all three of those systems have to be working in unison, and they have to be working correctly. And that's what we're trying to get together to address that finding. So having this position, like you said, auditing those CityWorks work orders, making sure they're completely filled out, they're accurate, and they represent the work that's being done in the field is key to getting through that asset finding. So this position I could definitely see on my side from a financial standpoint is definitely needed. So that's my 2 cents. With that in mind, I'll move on to the IT director.
Good evening again. With the support of HR, we developed an employee professional development plan for both of these positions, incorporating additional duties and responsibilities. The senior IT systems admin professional development plan included leadership training focused on project management and goal setting, training on cybersecurity best practices, which included Arizona Department of Homeland Security online training. Recognizing the importance of succession planning, I've been identifying opportunities for professional growth. Cade's role as a system admin is highly technical, but one key area where he lacks experience is in his supervisory capacity. To address this, we have reclassed his position to include supervisory responsibilities for the GIS team, providing valuable leadership experience that will prepare him for future career opportunities, including the potential to step into my role in 5 years. Additionally, the reclassification includes involvement in departmental budgetary planning, further expanding his expertise. Other new duties include serving as the designated cybersecurity liaison, reinforcing our commitment to security best practices. For the IT support specialist role, the employee professional development plan included completion of CORS, which is a training for FCC radio licensing. Mo has successfully completed this training to take over FCC licensing management for our radio systems. Since I've been handling this responsibility, transitioning it to Mo ensures continuity as radio licensing renewals come up. This is one area that I wish somebody would have done that for me back 22 years ago. When the person retired, they brought me a binder this big and said, "Here you go, good luck." And so I had to learn all the FCC licensing and radio infrastructure and stuff like that. So I'm hoping to pass as much information as I know on to him, and again, with succession planning, hopefully he can roll with that. Included in the plan was completion of Active Directory group policy management training, and Mo has acquired proficiency in this area, allowing him to take on the role and help alleviate the workload of the senior IT support specialist. Mo completed technical skill enhancements in networking. As duties from Cade and Justin are distributed, Mo is expanding his networking expertise, ensuring workload remains balanced across the team. Beyond the structured development plan, Mo's skills has surpassed the expectations of a level 1 support specialist, and his capabilities align more closely with those of a level 2 technician. I'll stand for any questions.
I got a little confused because you talked about Mo and Cade. So which was what for which position?
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, so Cade's position is the IT systems administrator, and we're proposing to reclassify him as a senior IT systems administrator. And then Mo's position is the IT support specialist, which is IT support specialist 2 reclassification.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So with that in mind, there is another slide that we'll start talking about the water reclasses as a different reclasses, but we need guidance on this slide in particular. This is all currently included in our balanced budget. Our revenues and expenditures are balanced with what we have right now. So with that, we need guidance moving forward into our tentative budget and final. Which positions are you guys in support of? What should the budget look like? The tentative budget can include all of these, and we can make final cuts at the final budget, or what are your intentions? I guess this is your chance to share with us, the staff.
Given the complexity that that answer would entail and the fact that we're in a work session, what I would recommend is there are going to be items that we can list as part of the tentative budget. I would recommend that these positions be listed individually so that you could literally vote on them, because I think we're going to get about as many answers as we have questions here. And so it would be extremely difficult for us to go through those and me to kind of, garner from nodding of the heads, like what's in, what's out. I would much rather put these in as a list. And again, any items, I know we discussed in the past the idea of increasing in terms of the water and the extra money per hour. And there'll be a number of items that you could request that we list in the tentative budget so that we could vote on them individually. And then based on the results of those votes, we could pass the budget with those amendments included. I think it'd be really difficult to go through and go, hey, do you agree with that one? And just nod our head. So does that sound like something? So for example, these in particular, my suggestion would be list these individually in the tentative budget, and you could vote on each individual position, because there may be some you support and some you don't, and that support may vary. Does that make sense as a mechanism for trying to get through that? So we're going to bring all these as part of the tentative. We'll list them separately, and at that time, before you adopt the budget as a whole, you can vote on these individually.
We could also wait to the final budget. The tentative is just setting that cap, like I said, so.
How are you going to wait to the final? You got to include the money.
So the tentative, I would just put these in the budget so that the tentative's higher, and then if you wanted to cut down at the final, we could cut down.
Okay.
But so it buys you time. Like I said, you could do that tentative or that final budget in July, June, so we have time to think about that.
Does that make sense? I think it just would be cleaner. Okay.
All right, with that in mind, we'll move on to our next subject, which is the water personnel increases. I'll have our HR director come up and present some abbreviated slides.
Mayor, look like Councilman, did you have a?
Is there a question? No. No? You sure?
So good evening, Mayor and Council. So I have the presentation we reviewed in a work session a few weeks ago. It's just condensed, so it's not in your packet. I'm just pulling up what we've reviewed already. So we thought it would be important because there's been a lot of discussion around the water wages, to review these slides one more time. This is, like I said, a condensed version, just so we know what these pay ranges look as compared to both our external market comparison and our internal market comparison. Just stop me if you have any questions. So first, in comparing our water pay ranges to Freeport pay ranges, once again, Freeport pay ranges for these positions are higher from an experience requirement perspective. For instance, at Freeport, once you have 6 months of experience, the pay range starts between $20 and $22 per hour, whereas our Water Resource Operator 1 requires 1 year of experience, and the pay range starts at $18 an hour. Moving into our internal comparison,
First, comparing water to our gas department, the entry-level gas position pay range has a minimum hourly rate of $23 per hour. This pay range is 28% higher than the entry-level position in our water department. Once again, education, experience, and skill levels are similar in both departments. Comparing water to the electrical department, the entry-level electrical department position has a minimum hourly pay rate of $24 an hour. This pay range is 33% higher than the entry-level position pay range in the water department. And once again, our recommendation is to adjust the water and wastewater pay ranges to align with the other City of Safford utility pay ranges and to be comparable with Freeport. The total estimated cost for this adjustment is $198,000, excuse me. That estimate did change a little bit because of a vacancy not being accounted for and the movement of that utility analyst position from the water department. So it's the net difference. So it went from 185,000 to 198. And we just want to point out that our recommendation is more so based on the fact that we do think it is important to bring the water rate pay ranges up to being comparable to our other utility departments, just because their experience, again, their experience, their education, their skill level, and the position and the work duties themselves are comparable to both gas and electric. Can I answer any questions?
I do feel we're gonna need to bump the water people up, and I'm certainly looking forward to the discussion with the rest of them on where we get to.
Okay, thank you.
So then my question would be kind of similar to the other positions. I think maybe we should bullet point this as well as a point of discussion when we adopt a tentative so you can break it out from the remainder of the budget. I mean, I think there's some differences of opinion on this, so I'd rather pull it out as an item in that discussion and again, adopt it as amended rather than just, I mean, we'll put it in as it's currently listed so that you have what I would assume would be the maximum amount. And then, but we'll have it as a bulleted item that you guys can discuss going forward.
And kind of a top,
What's the current recommendation, the $4?
$4 for the entry level, $2 for the supervisory. So I wanted to clarify that it's not $4 across the board for everybody. It's $4 for entry level, $2 for supervisor, or $2 for lead, right? Oh, I got it wrong. Got to come up and correct.
Straighten him out,
Where's your tie?
straighten him out.
So the proposal would be $4 for your operator 1, 2, and your lead, and then for the supervisor positions, it'd be $2 an hour.
Thank you for that clarification.
Sounds a lot like what I just said.
You said operator 1.
Okay. All right, so with that in mind, we will bring that back as an item on the tentative and/or final budget.
I have a question.
Councilmember Brenner.
We had Thursday scheduled as a work session for budget, then it changed to an E-session, and now I don't even know if we're having it. Can you please clarify what we're doing Thursday and if we're doing Thursday?
Well, the reason
'Cause
we
it
did
keeps
that was
changing on
because
me.
at that time, we thought we would have to act by Thursday, given the current ongoing debate with the FPO. That got accelerated, and so we then went back and moved that up to tonight, which then means that Thursday, if you wanted to have
Is it
a
back to
budget meeting, you could. That's why we changed it, because it was being dictated by events outside of our control. So at this point, we wouldn't need the Thursday meeting as an executive session. So if we wanted to repost it as another work session, so we would have another opportunity to discuss the budget before we do the summary, we could do that.
That'd be good, because we
There's
could
a
have
work
some more
session that we-
questions, not so rushed.
And there is a calendar item at the end that we can discuss this one more time, but I'll show you the dates that we have to hit and what's in the current plan. So we can talk more about adding dates or taking away dates, right? So table that questions and we'll come back to it in a few minutes, all right? So with that in mind, we presented the budget, like I said, for the general fund, the enterprise funds, and the internal service funds. That budget is what we call an imbalanced budget. Revenues and expenditures, for the most part, are in balance. As you can see here, this is just the general fund. The general fund used revenue projections from fiscal year 2025, or budgeted, not projected. 2025 budgeted ongoing revenues as the revenue projection for the budget that we're doing for 2026. That's the lowest possible revenue projection you can put out there. That still has a $57,357 surplus that you would still generate. So you have ongoing revenues of 19.8 million, you only spend 18 million even. There is some one-time expenditures for CIP that takes away from that, but you still would be to the positive, to the good. If we use the year-end projected for this fiscal year that we're currently in, we're gonna outperform our budget. So if we use that number would take that surplus up to $598,000. If we use what we normally would do for a budget is project a fiscal year 2026 based on trends from prior years, from current year, all that information. With that in mind, we could have a budget as high as $1.5 million of surplus if you did it the normal budget way. But again, there is headwinds in the economy right now that would tell us to not go to that highest projection. We're at the lowest projection. So we do have revenue that we could change that could balance the budget going forward. So I just wanted to get that out there for the general fund. The enterprise funds are fee-based, and a rate study will be coming back as part of this budget. We're going to be having rate study meetings with our vendor that we've selected, Wilden, and they will be presenting you how the individual utilities are doing on their revenues and their expenditures. Again, they have our 2026 proposed budget, and they have our 2026 proposed revenues based on fee increases or fee stabilization. So that's a presentation that will happen during this budget process, hopefully by the end of May. With that in mind, there's 4 items that have come to that are not in this budget. They're not part of the balanced budget. An additional COLA of 1%, just giving that number out there. It could be 4%, it could be just that times 4. But for 1% of a COLA is an additional $60,000 across all funds. That's not just the general fund, that's all funds. So, and then library signage is a one-time expenditure. We'd be adding 3 signs to this building, backlit. We do have estimates now on that are closer to $40,000 for that. It's a one-time. So you do have reserves in your fund balance presentation that we gave in early March. We showed you how the fund balances were exceeding even our reserve requirements. So we do have one-time revenues in the general fund that could pay for library signage if you wanted to do that. That's not currently in the budget. Golf course front entrance improvements. So this isn't just the signage at the front of the golf course. It's fixing the fencing along one of the neighborhoods, and it's also putting in signage, and it's adding beautification just to the front end of the facility. We hopefully would increase rates that we could charge at the golf course that could be offset to pay for some of this, but it'd be a one-time $100,000 dip into reserves to pay for it. The last one we've kind of mentioned throughout this process, it is not currently in the budget, is an additional $100,000 of facility maintenance improvements. We've been having one-on-one meetings with our Public Works Director, the city manager, myself, the assistant city manager, and we've been going through every one of our facilities and pointing out things that we could do better moving forward and coming up with a 5-year CIP plan. There is some needs out there that we have not addressed in this current budget. This $100,000 would get us started on that. If you need more detail on that, we do have our Public Works Director. He does have a list that he could possibly provide you tonight of some ideas of what he could do with this $100,000, if that helps you.
Yes, please.
Okay, come on up, Lance.
Good evening. As our finance director mentioned, we've been going around to some of our buildings. We're not quite halfway through all our facilities, but we've been itemizing certain things that need to be upgraded. For instance, City Hall, we've currently already got budgeted in there, customer service upgrades. That project is creeping as it goes on. I mean, we're doing flooring all the way to the back of the building. In the back of that, it'll ongoing creep a little bit. That's the current budget. There's other things on, City Hall is going to need to be painted within the next couple of years. Multiple buildings are going to need to be painted. Those are items that we would bid out. We get a contractor to come on and say, all right, we need to paint City Hall, the MIAC, library, whatever needs paint, we'll bid it out that year. air conditioning units. I already have in my facility maintenance unit or budget for maybe 1 or 2 units to go out a year. Sometimes that could be upwards of 4 units. We've got 11 units on this building alone. I think we have 11 units on the Mayock. So at any given time, we could have AC units go out that could cost $10,000 a piece. A couple other minor or major upgrades would be the restrooms at the annex, upstairs and downstairs, are in pretty good need of some upkeep. That could be some, $10,000 to $20,000 items that we could do internally. These will all be items that we'll put together a list. When we're all done, we'll prioritize this list. We'll kind of set together a 5-year plan, and in that 5-year plan, hopefully keep it in maybe $100,000 a year and do these maintenance items. Are not necessarily capital improvements because they're not really changing our assets. They're just upkeep items. So does that answer the questions that you have? Do you have any other questions for me on that item? Thank you.
So we'll be bringing back these 4 items as individual items on the budget, the tentative and or the final, however we want to approach that. Any questions or concerns?
You said raising rates at the golf course. We do that or the management does that?
It's a good question.
We'll find out.
We'll find out.
Okay.
So it is our golf course and we can set rates. We do operate through a management company there. So I guess it's a convoluted answer, but we can raise rates and they can raise rates as they see fit. Maybe. All right. So with that in mind, these would be separate items on the budget. Again, you can act on them individually. You can add to them. We just kind of gave you an estimated cost of if you wanted to do any of those. So the next steps in the budget, I talked about a calendar. I bolded the ones that are fluid. You don't have to necessarily do them on these dates. It would make the process a little bit cleaner if we did them on these dates, but the CIP needs to be passed before we move on to the tentative budget. So we have to agree to what's our 5-year capital plan. Again, the focus is on what's happening in fiscal year 26, 27, and through 30 can be fluid and changing, but we want to put together a 5-year CIP so we can go out for grants, show what we're trying to improve over the next 5 years. All of this stuff, this planning adds to our ability to do a lot of things in the city and also in finance. It helps me understand where I need to come up with money, how we're going to come up with that money. There's a lot of things that need to be resolved. So we're cleaning up the CIP. You saw a tentative CIP presented to you in early March. We've gone through those facilities. There's some changes we definitely want to make, and we'll hopefully bring you back a revised CIP that you guys can add to or take away from. But it's mostly everything you saw in the tentative with some things probably taken out of. We haven't really added much. So with that in mind, the CIP needs to get passed. The tentative budget needs to get adopted. Again, that sets that cap. You can't go any higher. If you set at $100 million, we can't go any higher than $100 million. At that point, the final budget either has to come in less or right at $100 million. So you don't want to really limit yourself during the tentative budget process, but it does help us narrow the discussion and get to the final budget quicker. If we're all in agreement going through the tentative budget, then the final budget's just a simple pass, right? So really, we'll leave that up to you, but right now we would have that tentative budget adopted as of May 12th. Again, we have a meeting right after Memorial Day planned to talk about our first rate study presentation. Again, this is where we talk about the utility funds and what they're going to be spending and what they're going to be receiving in revenue and proposed revenue changes, if there are any, in each one of those funds. So that's a big presentation. There will be a follow-up meeting in June to follow up on those, but we wanted to give you an idea during the budget process what we based our revenue budgets on for these departments and what we didn't use in the budget process. So May 27th, an important day, the day after Memorial Day. That's a Tuesday meeting. So I don't know if everyone's planned to be here the Tuesday after Memorial Day. That would be a key date to make. If not, we need to move that meeting. All right, truth and taxation, like I said, this is the one I can't change. Given the publishing in the paper and the requirements of state law, we have to go through the paper on a Wednesday, and have a follow-up meeting within 10 days. So this is a Thursday, June 5th meeting that we would have. It should hopefully be a fast and brief meeting that we talk about based on our budget that we have tentatively passed. We know a dollar amount that we need to collect as far as property tax, and we would be putting that out in front of the public for a public hearing. The public could weigh in during that, and at that point, we can make a decision on truth and taxation. You don't actually vote on the tax rate until after the budget is passed, but this is where the public gets to weigh in on whether or not we raise property taxes to pay for that. Again, our property tax is just increasing the rate for whatever assessment has come in. It technically is a raise in the amount of money we'll be collecting, but overall, it's the same rate that we've always used, 51.35%, or 0.5135% is really what we use. But again, that's an important meeting. I need to have a quorum at in order for us to move forward on even the idea of a property tax. That needs to happen on June 5th. The final adoption, you had till the third week in July. So we're always well ahead of the game. And again, our budget starts on July 1st. So passing a budget 3 weeks after you've already started it makes the process a little convoluted. But we would suggest getting that adopted at our June 9th, but we also have a second meeting in June. So there is time that if you only want to talk about the budget, we can talk about it, or we can get it done and move on and make sure, because we have to have time to load this into our financial system so that we actually have parameters for what people are spending starting July 1. So all of that takes time. So passing it on June 9th would be optimal, but not necessarily required. So with that in mind, that's my budget work session presentation. Is there anything that anyone feels unclear about? You've talked about this budget in one-on-ones. We've talked about it now publicly. Any questions, concerns?
I have a little bit of a concern knowing that on May 27th, we'll see these rates after we've already adopted a tentative, which is a max amount, but then only 2 weeks later, or 2-3 weeks later, then adopting the final budget. And I think, not sure that that's going to be enough time after we receive that
Makes sense.
information on the rates. I still have concern about sanitation, just with the current year's budget of using current year's expenditures versus their current year revenues. The expenditures are going to be exceeding those revenues. So I think seeing what what that rate study is going to show is going to be super important while looking at even that department.
So I don't know if you guys understood what Councilmember Flores is talking about there, but technically in our sanitation department, our expenditures currently exceed our revenues for next year. We would actually be operating in a deficit for our sanitation fund. It's $143,000 of a deficit. But that our current budget, when we say balance, it includes that deficit in there. So we'd be using, there is money over and above the fund balance reserve requirement. We could use one-time revenues to cover that deficit. There is planned increases in the rate for sanitation. So we would be looking to probably change that one fund based on that new revenue projection. But again, the revenues that we're using for all the other utility funds is just based on current year revenues. We're not showing that increase for any of the other funds. So we are still in balance even without the increases that could be proposed in that rate study. So
So we couldn't see the rates before we approved the tentative? That would
you
be
could,
kinda
we
nice
could,
to
like
get
I said,
those
we could push
first.
back that tentative budget adoption. It would press a lot of things, but we can push that back to June 9th. And then we could do our final in July. If you really wanted to see what the rates were going to look like, because ultimately in utilities, the expenditure budget is one part of it, but the revenue budget is the other part. And you'll know more about that.
Higher as a result of the rate study, so you'll be covered
We do
whatever
need-
expenditure pattern you put in your budget.
we need
I think we need the time, so I think pushing it back would be better for us.
We'll develop a plan and look into that. If we can get you information sooner from our consultant, maybe that could mitigate some of the things that you're saying.
Yeah.
Again, we're talking hypothetically right now. We haven't seen any final versions of their presentation. So we've met with them every week since the beginning of January. So we've gotten to this point. We're closer, but we're not able to give you concrete, identifiable revenue increases. So
And we have that second meeting in June as well that we can maybe utilize and still keep you at a good timeline.
So with that in mind, any other concerns? You got a lot of eyes on the
So
agenda tonight.
one question would be, we talked about May 1st, which we have the executive session. I think the former budget was May 5th, which is a Monday. You want to do another budget meeting? And if you did, would you want to do the 1st or the 5th? Or do you not need another budget?
We already have Thursday scheduled, right?
Yeah, but we'd have to repost it as a work session.
But we have the 5th scheduled also, so now we
No, at
still,
one point we did. I think we canceled that. And so
Been canceled.
we'd have to post it. You could do it either way. The posting of it is, It's just that if you do it on Monday, you stay in a normal rhythm where it's a Monday night, 6 o'clock, whereas the other instance would be a Thursday. Now, the reason we did Thursday again was an executive session, it was a time issue. So if you did the 5th, it would be more like you'd have a little bit more time. So you wouldn't have to go have another meeting at the end of this week. You could do Monday the following week, which is something we've done in the past where we did non-council meeting Mondays as work sessions during the budget process to try to get through, because it's a lot to do in one evening, and the meetings have gotten long, and they do during the budget. So do you want to do Thursday instead, or Monday instead?
I prefer Mondays to Thursdays. I have other obligations.
So why don't we cancel the May 1st? We'll do Monday, May 5th as a work session. And again, I'm not sure, maybe
What we're
we
talking
could-
about. I
yeah,
mean, we presented you everything general fund and internal
Yeah.
service fund already. Again, we can make a lot of those final decisions during the tentative and final budget passing. I think what you really want to see is the utility enterprise funds, and that's where the rate consultant, I don't think would be ready by May 5th to really give you we could maybe give you, spoon feed you some of it. Maybe they could finish up with sanitation and landfill first, and we could start showing you
And
those.
I just don't think we're going to be ready. I think
That is a
we're-
press, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we're working through a number of issues right now. And again, when you do the rate studies, you're going to end up with more revenue. Your expenditures aren't going to go up, your revenues are. And so you'll be made whole by the rate study. The question is, what does it look like? But I wouldn't want to talk about anything regarding rates until no sooner than that 27th meeting. So I will have to look at how do we push the rest of the budget out. If we want to do the tentative after seeing that, we'll have to time that out. So the question right now is, do we need another budget meeting? And if so, what is it that we want to talk about?
I think we still have quite a few, it's kind of rushed, and we have quite a few questions on the budget that we're just kind of getting pushed through, but we'd really like to dig into.
We have to have an agenda, and
Budget.
prepare for, okay,
So I guess, can you get us those questions?
yeah. I mean, what exactly are we looking
I thought in this presentation, I covered everything that I
sanitation.
thought we needed to talk about, but am I missing stuff?
I think my questions are more on sanitation and fleet. I want to understand what that fleet program really, what you want to do with that fleet program. What is our plan?
And I
for the
can get
future? And I
you,
want-
like,
So that's, I think.
at the end of
two
this
my
week, we can get you
focus.
something on that.
at? Sanitation and fleet.
Yeah.
Do we want to talk more about those two items?
Yeah, but I feel like sanitation really,
It's the rate
until we
study.
see the rates, I don't know that I would really, there wouldn't be much value added if we
So-
And
did any.
fleet by the end of the
sooner.
week, I can get
Let
you
me ask
that.
you a question on the rates. Exactly, what is it you're expecting the rates will do?
And, well, I also want to look at, I know that we're wanting larger equipment to be cash funded,
Mhm.
but maybe we make that exception that with sanitation, we lease purchase those sanitation trucks. And that would be, that would drop that motor vehicle operating expense you have currently in there that is causing that deficit. And
It does buy you time. You would not be
so it
paying
would-
for trucks up front.
right. I mean, it would buy some time, and I don't know. I just want to make sure that we're looking at all options, and I don't want to feel forced to approve rates because we've approved this budget now that we have to pay for when we could have
Well,
looked at other operating
Right, and I
expenses.
think sanitation is somewhat unique because it's the only one that you're now starting to see it go negative.
Right.
The other funds, you're still in the black, but sanitation certainly would not be that, right? We're trying to figure out if we go with the debt service option, then maybe those rates are mitigated.
Right.
So is May 5th too soon?
On sanitation, again, you
I
have to
mean,
wait
for
for the
sanitation, it will
consultant.
be.
Yeah. The fleet information I could get you by the end of this
There's
week.
no way we can get you rate materials before the end of the month. I mean,
Because again, sanitation is based on landfill tipping fees.
Right.
So you have to figure out landfill before you can figure out sanitation. So the May 27th is the earliest.
Give me
So-
some
But
time.
those are my questions. I don't know if others have other questions.
I'm feeling like we kind of already know our rates are going to have to go up.
Not all of
And-
them.
and
Some of them could
so,
go
well,
down.
But we're sitting here, I mean, we're talking spending a lot of money that we don't normally spend, and I almost feel like let's spend it so that rate study comes in, right? I mean, like,
Well, if you think about the general fund, we have taken a very unusual and very conservative approach because your revenue estimate is this year's budgeted revenue. Usually, as was shown there, you're 2 steps above that. So you're basically almost $1.2 million to $1.5 million understating revenue, and yet still making that revenue projection with the current expenditure pattern in the general fund.
I just don't want to budget to spend everything we can find so that we can have a rate increase. That's
In what, I guess
just what it looks like. I mean, that's the question I'm being asked. Where are you guys finding all this money? And is it so that you can raise our rates next
in the
month?
general fund or in the utility?
Across the board, they don't know where the money's coming from, neither do I.
Well, again, the general fund is budgeted at an extremely low level, so it wouldn't apply
We're,
to that.
we're buying things at a rate that, we're talking about buying stuff we have never been able to buy. And that's a legitimate question. Where are you guys getting your money? Are you planning on a rate increase next month?
Well, the general
That's
fund
the
wouldn't.
question I need to be able to answer to
Right,
my
so-
constituents, and I can't.
So the general fund is not based on rates, so that one's off the board. And again, we budgeted that extremely conservatively. So there is no, hey, we're jacking up our revenue projections so that we can spend more money. The opposite is true, right? And we were managed to get through this budget on the general fund side with an extremely low revenue projection. So we're being very conservative there, and part of that was due to the food tax. But in light of the fact that it looks like the food tax won't go through, you now have, hopefully, we've basically recession-proofed the budget because you would have already underestimated your revenues by an extreme amount. So the general fund doesn't fit that mold at all. It's the opposite. When it comes to the rates on the utilities, what you're spending on the utilities is something that's been an accumulation over a number of years. So in the case of sanitation, for example, the last time you raised the rates there, I think, was 2009, right? Most of the other utilities was 2018. When you did your 2018 rate study, you had 2 rate increases built into that rate study. You only passed one of them. So everything that we've done up to this point, we've done within the current rates and not gone in the red in any fund except sanitation. So again, it doesn't fit the mold. We have stayed within the revenue streams being collected in all funds except for sanitation, which for the first time this year would go negative under the current scenario. And that fund is an exception because unlike the other funds that were done in 2018, the last time that fund was done is 2009. So what is that, 16 years ago? So really, we have stayed within the revenue streams being generated. Now, as we look forward and we keep answering some of these issues like buying equipment that wasn't getting purchased, like the trucks for sanitation, or doing things like looking at the personnel numbers or looking at the life cycle maintenance in the electric fund, which probably those rates will probably go down. We have done a good job of staying within those dollars, but there are certainly pressures, inflationary pressures. We did give raises, so that will have some impact. There are also things that we weren't doing on that life cycle level that will also impact those rates. But up to this point, you have not spent money that you're not generating. And a big part of that is because in every fund, typically the revenues that are ongoing exceed your ongoing expenditures. And it's that gap that we use to fund capital. So if anything wasn't getting funded, it would be capital. However, we seem to have a challenge in getting capital projects done. So you really have put virtually no pressure in that regard. Most of the pressures are coming that are inflationary, and some of them now are being driven by the capital budgets, which we're now trying to get done. So again, I would say to you, in the general fund, the opposite of your concern is true, and we budgeted extraordinarily conservative this year. In the enterprise funds, you're just starting to get to the point where some of those funds will touch on revenues not being able to meet expenditures, most of which will be predicated on capital projects.
So I would really be scrutinizing the CIP, but as we go through the CIP, ask yourself, can we really not do this project? And if we don't, what does that mean to the system? So, but as far as increases, like John said, I mean, we're not proposing an increase in every utility. I think sanitation's one. Electric, like you said, could go down. Water could be the exact same. We could pass the rate on to higher users of water. So not everybody's going to be affected equally in this rate study. Our goal is to keep City of Safford residents the same. That is our goal as we go through this rate study. And we're going to try to get there the best of our ability. But there is ongoing capital needs that have not been addressed that will have to be addressed through some sort of rate increase. Whether or not that everyone in the city pays that, that'll be the question that we'll go through the rate study. But I think we're making it sound worse than it is. I mean, like you said, we have a balanced budget. We're in the black on everything except for sanitation. And sanitation, I can't solve it. It's trucks that haven't been replaced, and 3 to 4 of them are broken every day. So we've let that one lapse too far to go do anything about that. But it's not a major increase for normal City of Safford residents, what we're proposing. There's certain things that you do in sanitation that need to be addressed. There's bulky pickup. No one pays anything for it. You spend a lot of money on it. Those are the kind of things the rate study is going to show you, that maybe we add additional fees for additional services that we've never collected before. So don't think of it as a rate increase across the board. Think of it that we're divvying out that rate to where it's actually being spent. And that's what this rate consultant's going to show you. So don't think that we're just increasing the budget to increase the budget. We're trying to show what's costing the cost to go up and who's paying for that. So
One of my other thoughts, and I say this in jest, but you were going to split out those additional employees, and I just wanted an asterisk beside the ones who need a new truck to get to their job site before we vote.
So was that a jest? I missed the joke, but I get it now, I guess. So
In answer
there
to your
something-
question is, I don't feel like we've really dug into anything. And not to pick on library, but she came up and talked. If someone asked me, well, you're increasing your library budget, the only thing I can tell you is, yep, we're hiring a teen coordinator. We have not dug into any of these departments to see what are we really spending. And I know there's some changes. I mean, I've kind of high level looked. I think there was some package drop-offs. There was some other, or book pickup thing. I mean, I don't feel like we're digging into these departments. We're going so high level that when people are asking me, I don't honestly,
Dug into
if
the
she wouldn't have
CIP.
brought out that we were negative in sanitation, you guys keep saying balanced budget. I was just assuming
How
everything was
did you know we were
good.
negative in sanitation?
Because you showed us our revenues first, and then I saw our operating
So
expenses,
again,
and
together,
it
We're,
just.
we're summarizing.
But they were at separate meetings.
So I guess
and
Councilmember Brantner, we're trying to come at it from a macro level. We kind of showed you that. Those one pagers where we showed who's changing the most. Overall, your budget in the general fund is only changing 6%. And most of that's a personnel increase. So if you're not for the merit, you're not for the COLA, that would take away a lot of your. So really the reason we didn't show you library is outside of that one request, her budget's pretty much the same as it was year over year with an inflationary growth in it. So we tried to avoid that mundane talking about every line item in the budget. We did provide that to you in the packets. So you do have that information. If you want to discuss that, another meeting on the 5th of May might be a great place to talk about that kind of stuff.
He asked why we needed it. That was my answer.
So that's
is
a great
to
answer,
dig
that if you
in.
want to get into the line items, but I didn't know if I felt that across the board. As we had one-on-ones, it was get to a briefer, higher level macro overview of the budget and get the process done. But if it needs to go back into the detail and start from the micro level and come back up, we can do that.
I think that's how it was presented to us, but I don't know that that's what we asked for. 'Cause we
There was
just
no
kinda
vote,
went into
right?
the
You're right. There was
meetings
no
as
vote. It
just
was
like,
an
"Here's what you
individual
get."
understanding.
Let's say we come back with a May 5th work session, which we could do. Would we then just allow staff could sit and answer your questions?
Yes, that would be perfect.
Okay.
It doesn't have to be.
So let's schedule a budget meeting for May 5th.
If you wanna
And
come,
we'll
come.
have
If
the
you don't,
department
don't.
heads here, and then whatever questions you can generate. If you have questions before now and then that you need clarification to be able to better ask those questions, I believe the line items have been provided,
Correct.
right? So any questions you have, it'll give us an opportunity to let council just ask questions, and we'll just field them as best we can at that
That'd be
point.
great instead of holding.
All right, so
everyone up
May
in that-
5th,
May
6
5th,
o'clock.
It's not too soon? You think enough time? May 5th?
You could have it at your regular May 12th meeting.
Oh, don't do that.
Too many questions.
I mean, it don't matter to me whenever you
May
guys want
5th.
to, but I don't know.
No, do it, let's do it May 5th.
Yeah, because if we do it on May
Fifth, okay.
5th, and the sole purpose of that meeting is what you want, then you drive the meeting, you ask the questions, we'll answer them. It's focused, we won't be here for 14 hours, and you will have a meeting set up specifically to answer questions you have of us.
And do we actually need the department heads?
I think you do. Because if you're gonna dig in on the details, I think the budgets that have been created by them, I think they should be there to answer those.
Yeah, we can speak ancillary to it, but you're gonna need them to speak to the detail.
So does that sound like a good idea? So let's schedule that and we'll go with that. Okay,
Okay,
good?
all right.
Then we'll go ahead and close the work session and reconvene into our regular meeting. Item number 10, new business. Everybody have a chance to review the minutes of April 14th. Any changes?
Good.
I move we approve the minutes.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the April 14th minutes. All in favor? Opposed? Carries. Item number 2, spending approval for the flock safety cameras. Tyler.
Good evening again, Mayor and Council. I come before you tonight seeking approval to purchase equipment and services through Flock Safety Incorporated. The purchase is fully reimbursed through a one-year border assistance grant provided by the Arizona Department of Public Safety, and staff recommends the approval of this expenditure. Our goals in this are quality life and public safety. The police department, in collaboration with other local agencies, applied for and was awarded an $85,000 grant from the Border Assistance Fund. The funding will cover initial costs and licensing associated with Flock Safety's technology. We intend to install the Flock Safety cameras at strategic locations throughout the city to enhance public safety and support intelligence-led policing. Flock is a nationally recognized provider of real-time surveillance and license plate reader cameras, and they offer access to an extensive information sharing network. The proposed installation will integrate with existing surveillance infrastructure used by neighboring agencies, and it'll further strengthen our regional law enforcement efforts. A sole source justification letter is attached, outlining Flock's unique ability to meet the department's operational requirements. The company is an industry leader in LPR surveillance technology, and with established networks, facilitate real-time data sharing. They enhance both public and officer safety. Local agencies, including our department, have successfully utilized current Flock Safety cameras in investigations involving homicides, human smuggling, child exploitation, theft, burglary, and many other criminal activities. For the financial analysis part, the grant that was awarded was $85,000 year one of Flock Safety contract, and that includes installation and operation would be $80,734. The contract is renewable on an annual basis, and future funding would be sought and pursued through additional grant applications. And again, staff recommends the City Council approve the contract with Flock and authorize the expenditure of the $80,734 from the grant funding. And with that, I'll take any questions. Yep.
Work session meeting.
Can you, for those of us who don't do this on a daily basis, it kind of went over a high level, but what does this flock surveillance actually do?
So we have a combination. In this grant, we're seeking some, what they're called LPR cameras, which would be license plate reader cameras. Currently, other agencies locally have them. To give a overview as they go by, if we have reasonable suspicion, probable cause to associate a vehicle with criminal activity, that makes it searchable. It's not just feeding us all of the data of where everybody's going and what everybody's doing, which is a common misconception. So it assists, and I'll give you one example of a vehicle that came into our community that was flagged for a homicide out of state. Gave our officers advance notice that we have this person in our city limits, and instead of a cold traffic stop where we walk up on what could be a really dangerous situation, we have time to prepare. We have time to plan, do these things. In that case, it ended up in an officer-involved shooting in another jurisdiction, but with the information that we had and the intelligence that we received from these cameras, kept our officers and our communities safe in that instance. That's one aspect, the license plate reader cameras. The other one, council had actually requested some additional cameras in some areas that we're looking to expand is our new park, several intersections in town. Flock provides some of the top intersection cameras that we have, so we can kind of keep an eye on traffic. If we have cases of burglaries, any major crimes, we can put together timelines and do things like that based off of that. This first year is integrated with what's Real-Time Crime Center solutions that would offer basically the ability to patch this into dispatch and for them to be a part of providing notifications when we have these things coming through town. So there's a lot of technology that comes here that can help us better utilize our limited resources at times, make us more effective. I hope
So
that.
it's not just the license plate reader that this is going to do.
Correct.
Traffic cameras, park cameras.
So yes, there are license plate readers strategically placed, but also live view cameras
Okay.
will be a part of it.
And so you're looking for grant to continue funding this 80,734. Would those be separate grants to continue the ongoing, like you'd have to do a grant for the license plate reader versus the traffic safety type thing? Or I'm just looking to see, like, if you didn't get the grant, then where does it fall in a year from now when the grant's up and they say, okay, well, whatever. So does that go to the city? What would the cost to the city be after?
Sure. And that would be basically, if we don't receive the grant, we would definitely have to find the funding. It wouldn't be an ongoing 80,000. That would be the initial purchase of the equipment. And the year to year after that would be a lower rate
Okay.
at the operating, basically licensing costs. It would still likely be, I don't have that number in front of me, but I want to say it was between $40,000 to $50,000 a year. And the grant that we received this from has been a pretty consistent grant for other local areas and agencies around us. And that is what our ultimate goal would be. And again, this is an annual thing, and that we're not necessarily tied to. Part of it, they're doing a lot of proof of concept right now and hoping the results kind of speak for themselves to show the effectiveness of it. That's kind of where we're at right now.
Thank you.
So if you didn't get a grant next year, we'd have an added burden.
That, or we would have the company come and basically take down what we weren't able to cover.
And you would bring it back to us, that it
Correct.
next year coming around.
Correct. Yeah, we would know ahead of time whether or not we were going to be grant funded, and obviously give the opportunity to council to kind of drive that as far as what we would like to see and what the results have been over the last year. Is it something that is worth continuing?
Did you say there's different cameras or the same camera, you can get it to do different functions?
There are different cameras. So there are some, and to kind of get into the weeds a little bit more, there are several LPR cameras strictly that are just license plate reader cameras that will be placed at obviously points of entrance and exit of the city. Then there are others that are live view bundled with an LPR camera. And then there's others specifically that are just live view cameras.
And that brings me to, there is, across the nation, some people have concerns with what's being done with them. So is there a policy going to be written up on what you're going to do with them exactly?
Yeah, absolutely. This is all criminal justice information sensitive. So anything and everything that we do is log track, and there has to be a reason associated with it, a valid criminal justice reason. So it's not, I can't just go in and search my neighbor's car because I want to. I have to have a valid criminal justice reason associated with it. Again, like I said, these cameras aren't feeding us information of any and every vehicle that are going through. It takes a specific act, a documented act, just like running a license plate on our computer, that we have the authority and we have the training of, there's laws basically that protect that public information. So there should be reasoning for it.
I'm going to share something too. So when you utilize this, when you search a vehicle, you have to put a reason why you're searching for that vehicle or why that license plate. It specifically ask you what's the reason for your search. And you have to place that in there for Flock.
Correct. So annually, our officers have to recertify in what's called the CJIS certification, and we take tests basically on what are the laws, what are the requirements in order to to run these different queries and searches, and this would fall under that also.
So you could draw up a policy
We could drop a policy. We would follow basically
for our citizens
state
to know.
law.
for
It
our
would be our,
citizens to know what you're gonna be doing with them.
sure, we could definitely do that. It would mimic state law, basically,
Okay.
is what it would be.
And how many cameras you gonna get with 80,000?
I believe we have about 24 total.
Oh. Well, that's what I'm interested in, is the policy, and that if we don't get no monies next year, I don't know that I would want it to be part of the budget yet, but we'll see how they work out. I think. I can't make their mind up.
City of Safford's the only one that doesn't have block right now. Thatcher County, Pima just got a grant also. So
Thatcher maybe got about 3 of them.
5.
I'm not sure what the total number is for other agencies. Like I said, I know part of our asking starting this was brought with concern from council of wanting to protect some of these places that we're putting in, this money that we're investing in all of our parks and different places, which I think is a great thing. Like I said, we want to have nice things in the city, and we want to be able to help protect them and take care of them. And this will be a tool and an asset. We're sometimes limited in manpower, and like I said, bringing in technology to help us be better at our jobs, help us be more effective, is a huge part of it. And so I think this is a big step in the right direction.
Yeah, I remember armed robbery at Glen Meadows Park we solved by these cameras. So I remember that.
And like I said, I do have, there are numerous cases that we've made with other agencies, cameras that we have, as far as Safford PD has been able to utilize their technology, and we've made very successful cases off of them and put some pretty bad people away because of it. So we've seen success prior to us even purchasing these cameras. We've benefited from others so far. So I anticipate that it will only grow.
And so I
Anybody
think
else have any comments?
we need to be clear that it will require sustained resources. So if you put all these cameras on the poles and then you can't, I mean, if you stop, now you've got cameras on the poles that you can't run. So again, Mayor Ortega, Vice Mayor Lopez, I think if we vote in the affirmative, I think we're voting for basically an increased level of service that mirrors really to some degree what the other communities already have. So that creates some continuity through the valley. But I would want to make sure that if we do that with the understanding that it makes no sense to mount the cameras and then not continue to fund them. It may be that in future budgets, you would have to fund them to keep them functional.
You'd want it to be ongoing.
Right. I want that to be understood.
I move for the approval of the grant money spending for flock safety cameras.
Second.
The grant money spending. So that's just the grant money, not what he said, because they've said 2 different things. So
What I'm saying is that under the grant.
What
we
I'm
only
saying
have
is
money
let's do this for this year and let's go on.
Okay, this year.
And if we decide we don't want it next year, we'll decide that. But
Okay.
I second that.
Okay, we have motion and second to approve of 1-year use, right?
spend the money.
Yes.
All in favor? Opposed? Carries. And we'll move on to item number 3, warehouse purchase from Dana Kempner.
Mayor and council, this is a request for mayor and council to authorize a purchase for over $60,000 for our warehouse to buy electric meters in anticipation for the fiscal year 2026 meter replacement project. We had a previous item that bought water meters. This one's specifically for electric meters. The lead time on electric meters is a little bit longer. They do have batch processing. All these meters have to have a certain setup to them that's specific to the city of Safford electric system. So some will take 3 months, some will take 9 months. So they're getting this order in sooner or later so that if we intend to start our meter replacement project in fiscal year 2026, these are here. So there are approximately 4,000 residents in the city of Safford that have electric power with us. And if you divide that by 10, that would be 400. But again, because we buy these in lots and allotments, we're buying 628 meters to start the fiscal year 2026 project. And the cost of the meters range from $242.73 for a residential meter to $733.90 to a commercial meter that we would find in that Zone 1. The total cost is $183,405.28. Again, this would not be expensed until they're taken out of the warehouse. So this is just the warehouse procuring them and setting them on the shelf, preparing for that project to start. So with that in mind, staff recommends that mayor and council approve this warehouse purchase for $183,405.28 to Dana Kempner, which is a division of Core and Main for electric meters.
I guess I do have a question because the agenda doesn't have that price on it. The agenda is for $60,000 for a first
So
go around.
the 60,000 that I talk about is over 60,000. So our purchasing policy has certain thresholds. So I tried to put it in the title of this item that we're going over that $60,000 threshold and spending the $183,000. So that specific dollar amount is in the CCNF. The 60,000 doesn't refer to how much we're buying. That just refers that we're exceeding that $60,000 threshold. So it requires council approval before moving forward. It's one of those things we didn't do in the past. So I'm trying to clarify that we're bringing this because this does require, per the purchasing policy, your approval to make this kind of large purchase.
So you're not saying that we're approving 60, we're just saying you can go over.
You can go over
to hit
60,
the
it just happens to be
183.
183,000.
Okay, 'cause that
So
was
thank you for the
kinda
clarification.
Yeah, it is a little bit misleading. It would be nice to have that real number in there.
Okay, I can do that in the future.
Mayor, I suggest we approve for the purchase of, or the authorization to approve up to 60,000 over for the purchase from Dana Kempner.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the purchase from Dana Kempner, authorizing to spend over $60,000. Should we put the amount that?
Yeah, the recommendation I have in the staff recommends that the city and council and the warehouse
The
purchase for $183,405.28 to Dana Kempner would be preferable. So it's clear that
The motion should be that if you're motioning to approve the purchase of 183,405.28.
So we'll change my motion. Do I need to restate it?
Yes, please.
Mayor, I suggest we approve with the change to 183.
Councilwoman Bratner, sorry, it's a motion
Oh,
to
sorry.
approve, not suggest, sorry.
I motion we approve the request to approve up to 60,000 over, which is 183,405.28 to Dana Kempner.
And I also second that.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to approve the $183,408,000 expenditure to Dana Kempner. All in favor? Opposed? Carries. Thank you. And next, we'll move on to item 11, contracts and agreements. Item number 1, 14th Avenue, pavement rehab.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This is a request from Mayor and City Council to award construction contract to CKC Construction and Materials LLC from Safford, Arizona for the 14th Avenue Pavement Rehabilitation Project. Strategic goals, this is for infrastructure maintenance. This project is funded by the HERF, Autoloo, and sales tax funds with a budget amount of $500,000. The 14th Avenue Pavement Rehabilitation Project will consist of milling 2 inches of existing asphalt and replacing with 2 inches of new asphalt from Relation Street to El Paso Boulevard. The project was advertised and bidders solicited in accordance with ARS formal bidding procedures, and a notice for invitation to bid was published in the local newspaper. Pre-bid conference was held on March 19th and was attended by one prospective bidder. On April 3rd, the city clerk received 2 bids that were publicly read with the following results. Sunland Asphalt at $486,876, and CKC Construction and Materials LLC, and there's actually a corrected number, and that's what's on your packet. It should be $423,000 and $423,405, which is $51 lower than what's shown on your packet. The 14th Avenue Pavement and Rehabilitation Project is in the city's capital improvement plan for fiscal year 2025. Again, we have a $500,000 amount that was budgeted for this project, and CKC Construction Materials came in at $423,000 and $423,405. Staff has found that the lowest bid submitted by CKC Construction Materials LLC is the lowest responsive bidder and is qualified to complete the work as specified for this project. Therefore, staff is recommending that the contract award for the construction of the 14th Avenue pavement rehabilitation project to CKC Construction and Materials in the amount of $423,405 and allow the city manager or his designee to execute contract change orders not to exceed 10% of the construction contract value, if in the best interest of the city to do so. I stand for any questions.
Questions? If not, it's an action item.
I move that we approve the CKC bid for revamping 14th Avenue, which is long overdue. $423,405 plus possible 10%, up to a 10%, whatever that fee is.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the contract of 14th Avenue pavement rehab in the amount of $423,405, possibly 10% more. All in favor? Opposed? Carries. Then we'll move on to our resolutions. Number 1, Resolution R25-014. It's the intent to reimburse for any lease purchase vehicles in fiscal year 2026.
Mayor, council, this is an item that the city of Safford has not used in the past, so it's kind of new for you guys. So hopefully I can explain it in such a way that's helpful. This is a request for mayor and council to approve Resolution R25-014, a resolution that declares the city's intent to reimburse the city for any leased purchase vehicles it purchases for fiscal year 2026. So these items are typically very common if you're doing lease purchasing. It gives us flexibility is what you normally would use these for. So the reason we're here tonight is we put in an order for 2 Colorados as part of the fiscal year 2026 budget with Kempton Motors. Those were not supposed to come until July 1st of 2025. They have shown up and have already been paid for by the city using our current budget. We intend to reimburse ourselves, but in order to do that, you have to have a resolution like this to be IRS compliant that says, because I've already spent this money 60 days ago, I intend to reimburse myself. That's how I keep my tax exempt status. You would use it for that reason, would be reason number 1. The second reason is it's not a great time to go out in the market, especially around July, to go out and get debt. So if we're still leasing vehicles from Kempton, this gives us the flexibility that having this resolution out there, I could spend a year researching the best time to go out into the market to get debt and issue it because I've had this resolution in place. So this gives me some flexibility moving forward. That's not the case for this reason. The reason we're here today and tonight is because those 2 trucks came in earlier than expected, and now I need to make sure that they're part of the reimbursement. So it gives me kind of a twofold response to our debt situation. But again, we could pass this resolution and not even choose to issue debt. We could choose to cash fund it. I don't see that in our budget, but we could not follow through on this. This is just a declaration tonight that if we intend to issue debt and we intend to reimburse ourselves for those 2 Colorados, which is about $80,000, we have to have this resolution in place to allow us to do that. So this just opens that door that we have flexibility moving forward. Again, the fiscal year 2026 budget has a vehicle replacement amount in the budget. It is greater than $80,000. It's $1.5 million for small vehicles. And if we intend to reimburse ourselves, we have to have this resolution in place. With that, I'll stand for any questions and answer any.
Anybody, any questions? Do we have to renew this every year?
Anytime you enter into a new lease, so every time think about every fiscal year is going to be a lease in and of itself. So I intend to do this every year just to give me flexibility, so I'm not having to go out and get into the bond or get into the debt market before we've even procured the vehicles. I can procure the vehicles, make sure that we get what we want, and then at that point, figure out the best time to get into the debt market. This gives me that flexibility and allows us to do that legally.
I move
So-
we approve Resolution R25-014, the intent to reimburse for any lease purchase vehicle in 2026.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve Resolution R25-014, the intent to reimburse for any lease purchase vehicles for 2026. All in favor? Opposed? Carries. Now, the ordinances.
Yeah, read it into. This approves resolution number R25-014, the reimbursement resolution. Resolution of the City Council of the City of Safford regarding its intention to issue tax exempt obligations.
Thank you. Then we'll move on to 13, ordinance number 025-005, amendment to Title 17 zoning, Chapter 17.12.205, metal storage container boxes. Jamie?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This is a request for the Mayor and City Council for a first read of ordinance O25-005, an ordinance of the City of Safford, Graham County, Arizona, amending Title 17, Chapter 17.12.250, metal storage container boxes, to effectively balance the need for storage solutions while preserving community aesthetics, safety, and zoning integrity. Background, you'll notice that we did have a work session about this item, and after discussing the upcoming general plan update and setbacks at the work session, staff discussed setbacks for metal storage container boxes with the fire chief. The chief has stated that setbacks can be less than 7 feet for these containers. Staff recommends that once the legislative session is complete and SB 1229 is amended, passes, or fails, the city may look at setback regulations in their entirety. As of April 16th, 2025, SB 1229 only applies to municipalities with populations greater than 70,000, and I did check that before I left the office again this evening. There has been no change. There may be an amendment to reduce that to 30,000 residents, but it would still not apply to the city of Safford. You'll notice in your red-lined amended ordinance in residential C1, it now reads up to 320 square feet of metal storage containers, which removed the up to 160 square foot containers. And we've also edited it to C1C, that all containers shall be painted and maintained an earth tone color consistent with the surrounding terrain. And then for use in commercial and industrial zones, metal storage containers may be established with an approved building permit. And we've reiterated the wording that says an earth tone color for the paint. And then added section E, metal storage containers shall be screened from public view with landscaping or an opaque wall or fence. With that, I will stand for questions.
An action item.
Mayor, I move to approve ordinance O25-005, amendment to Title 17 zoning, Chapter 17.12.250, metal storage container boxes.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve ordinance 025-005. It's the amendment to Title 17 zoning, chapter is about the metal storage container boxes. All in favor? Opposed? Carries.
This completes the first reading of ordinance number O25-005, an ordinance of the City of Safford, Graham County, Arizona, amending Title 17 zoning, Chapter 17.12.250, metal storage container boxes to streamline and update the development regulations within the City of Safford.
Thank you. Then we'll move on to item number 14, the finance report. Everybody have a chance to review P cards? Go ahead.
I know I'm beating a dead horse. I want to say thank you to all the departments that have really stepped up. Their stuff is looking a lot better. There's a lot more description. It's really great. But I feel like I'm beating my head against the wall every time I ask if we can get the fleet department to please start shopping local. I mean, unless, like I talked to John about this, unless there is a critical emergency, I really don't see that there would be any parts that they can't wait a day for. If something's up on a lift, they're working on a truck, you know, they could bring it down from the lift, move it aside, wait for the part tomorrow, fix it tomorrow. I mean, if we've got a fleet manager, he should be scheduling this so he knows what vehicles are coming in this week, next month, whatever, and planning ahead for this. We're really trying to help our local economy, and we're talking shop local, but yet we just keep seeing over and over and over all these charges that are not in the city of Safford over at O'Reilly, just to pick on Fleet, sorry. But when we know that Napa has it, they've announced on the radio, I don't know, a gazillion times that they can have it within 24 hours. But I keep asking and I keep getting told, well, we've asked the employees, we've asked the employees. At what point are we going to move past asking employees and start getting some action on this?
So I had a conversation with the fleet manager today. I think the new fleet management software we have proposed in next year's budget, we're going to start documenting why we make this decision of going to O'Reilly's and what the timing that we're really getting from our local Napa dealership. So we'll be able to document that rather than anecdotally tell you the same thing over and over and over. But in the meantime, we can encourage the use of not using O'Reilly's moving forward. It's actually the first statement I made to him.
I think they can use O'Reilly's. You ain't been beating the horse. I buried it. I've been asking for years. And, you know, there are common parts, filters, brake pads, things like that that can't, you know, really some of the stuff should be stocked. You have vehicles that like vehicles. You can stock some of that stuff and have it readily available. And I'd like to add to the P card, O'Reilly's and stuff or wherever. I'd like to know if they went to get it or if it was delivered. If somehow you could signal me that.
We can put some sort of designation, like you'll notice for warehouse, we do a WHS. This could be a DLV or something like that for delivered. I believe they're all delivered. We don't ever go and pick them up. There's only 3 people in the fleet department at any given time, so. But again, I reiterated today that first thing, don't shop at O'Reilly, and then we'll try to document that moving forward, but we can make that request again one more time to our fleet manager.
Yeah, you can shop at O'Reilly's. If they got a better deal, that's another story too. But
I had that conversation with our fleet manager also, and he gave me a part number and he said, I can have this in 3 hours or this in 3 days. And this one is enough cheaper that you didn't get anything from shopping local.
okay, 'cause I did talk to Napa and they said they have a big warehouse. They have most things and stuff. But
And that's where I've asked him to document it. And again, this new system might help us know that, hey, I made the order at 3 o'clock, they delivered it at 3:20, or they delivered it at 6 o'clock the next morning. So we can actually say, hey, we are seeing these delays from Napa, not just anecdotally.
But with
But
the
in the
new
meantime, we can
system-
not shop at O'Reilly's.
We should see a maintenance schedule though, correct? Because there shouldn't be any reason why you've got something up unless it's an emergency unseen. You should have a schedule of Troy's truck is coming in, I'm gonna change the brakes, I know what I need. So we should already have this scheduled and know what's coming in.
So I guess
So-
maybe we could explain better our fleet program. He calls in every vehicle every 3 months, whether or not it has a lot of miles on it or not. So we don't really have any mile-based assessment of the vehicle. He does an inspection at that point and decides what needs to be replaced. As you can see, a lot of stuff is like brake pads and stuff like that. That isn't really scheduled when it comes in. It goes through that inspection process. If the brakes are still good, it will go back out on the road. If it's not good, at that point, they make the assessment and charge for the part. So again, I follow what you're saying. I think the new fleet software could help us get there to a more analytical approach. But again, right now, everything is paper-based. It's an inspection process that leads to parts. There's not really a plan. We don't have all these parts available when the truck shows up. So we wait to see what it looks like. We always make that last minute decision. So, but again, we're trying to improve our operations and we can take that recommendation. I did reiterate today, don't shop at O'Reilly's. To the fleet manager, who is family, and he still ignored me. Okay.
I have 2 of the most common pickups in the world. And when I go to fix something, I end up at O'Reilly's if I want to fix it today. And it's still cheaper than anybody else.
So I'm getting mixed guidance here. So are we asking to never shop at O'Reilly's, or we're still open to the fleet manager making a operational decision?
I don't think it's a never, but I mean,
no, not
it looks
never.
like it's priority where maybe it doesn't need to be. Because again, unless it's an emergency, there's really nothing, you can't wait until tomorrow, unless it's cheaper, fine. But let's,
It always is cheaper.
I don't know.
I would say just have him use his good judgment. He knows, you've explained how the council feels. So, leave it up to him.
Support
You-
our
you do-
local
you know,
business, that's all.
Yeah,
Okay, that's a little bit clearer. I
Yeah,
can go with
not
that.
never, not never at O'Reilly's.
Won't we be
just-
having a discussion on fleet next council meeting, and the fleet manager will be here, correct?
That would be
He'll
good.
personally be here.
There you go. Cut to
Mr.
the
Bingham's
chase.
not taking the heat.
Cut the middleman
Okay,
out of
Any
it.
more questions about the P card? If not, let's move on to revenue over $5,000. Any questions there?
No, sir.
Okay, if not, let's move expenses over $5,000. Anybody there? Nope. Then let's move on to 15, announcement of current events. None. Then how about request for future agenda items? Nope. Okay, then we'll close our regular meeting and reconvene into executive session. We'll need a motion and a second for this.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to reconvene, to adjourn. All in favor? Opposed?
Yeah, it's not to adjourn, it's to go into executive session.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Adjourn into
Executive session, yeah. After a 5-minute break. Okay. Now we're back in regular session again. Need a motion?
We move on to the next item, which is an approval for the emergency ordinance being presented by Cameron.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This is a request from Mayor and Council to consider an emergency ordinance authorizing temporary fees and emergency purchasing authority to sustain aviation fuel availability at the Safford Regional Airport. Strategic goals are quality of life, financial management, and infrastructure. Background: due to changes in the fixed-based operator at the airport, or the FBO, the City of Safford needs to declare an emergency to maintain operations at the airport in the interim basis. Staff will return to council with details on the purchases of fuel and equipment to continue operations at the airport in the future. And staff is recommending approval of ordinance 025-006, authorizing temporary fees and emergency purchasing authority to sustain aviation fuel availability at the airport. And with that, I will stand for questions.
Questions? If not, it's an action item.
Move that we approve the emergency ordinance 025-006, authorizing temporary fees and emergency purchasing authority to sustain aviation fuel availability at the Safford Regional Airport.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve emergency ordinance number 025-006. Any more discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carries.
This approves ordinance number 025-006, an emergency ordinance of the City of Safford, Arizona, authorizing temporary fees and emergency purchasing authority to sustain aviation fuel availability at the Safford Regional Airport.
Thank you. Then we'll move on to item number 2. Intent to establish, increase, or eliminate airport fees in response to FBO transition.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This is a request from Mayor and Council to consider changes of airport fees for posting of intent to the city website. We have the same strategic goals of quality of life, financial management, and infrastructure. Background: due to changes in the fixed base operator at the airport, the City of Safford needs to establish fees for services to maintain operations at the airport in the interim basis. And staff will return to council in July 2025 to formally adopt these fees. I do have attached the current airport fee structure. The red line version was provided to you as well. I would like to make note that there is one item that was an error on my part. Article 5, fuel flowage fees. We are not intending to change any of the fuel flowage fees at the airport. Those will remain the same, so that was an error on my part.
Any questions or comments? If not, it's an action item.
Move we improve the intent to establish, increase, and eliminate airport fees in response to FBO transition
As amended.
as amended.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the intent to establish, increase, and eliminate airport fees in response to the FBO transition as amended, you said? All in favor? Opposed? Carries.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? We're adjourned.